So this is how John McAfee actually died. I want people to know John, which is the same thing that they said about Epstein. It must have been some pretty damning information for that level of hunting. That's the best way I can describe it. It was reported that John died of self-harm.
Right.
And when they found him, that he was actually dead in his cell, but that's not true. So what happened after he died, there was an investigation that the prison opened up. The prison itself opened up an investigation into his death, which from what I was told is not the standard procedure. So they did the investigation, and what happened was John was actually alive when they found him. I got to see a little bit of security footage. The guard had come, John's door was open a crack, and you see the security guard kind of wave, trying to get someone to open the door. So apparently he was found, can I say hanging?
Yeah, asphyxiated.
From the window in his cell.
And this was from like a sheet or something?
No, the shoestrings. Shoestrings were around his neck. And when they found him, he had a pulse and he was breathing. Breathing was shallow. The pulse was faint, but still, he wasn't dead as it was reported. And so what happened next was they brought his body into the hallway and they called in the medical response team to come and do whatever it is that they do. And so for over 10 minutes or so, they're performing CPR on him. So they're doing chest compressions and they've got this, the bag over his mouth and they're giving him oxygen. But it wasn't until I looked at the pictures of the cell and John, after everything, right? Mm-hmm. So they put him back into the cell and they took pictures and everything, that I understood what actually happened. Because in the pictures, the noose was still around his neck.
They put him back in the cell?
Yes.
Okay.
So the noose was still around his neck, which means when they performed CPR on him, the noose was around his neck. And so as medical professionals, I took a little bit of medical training, and so I know you're supposed to clear the airway. And so the fact that they didn't remove the shoestring from around his neck just informs you of what exactly happened there. Because how can you save someone's life when you're not giving them the life-saving measures that they need by clearing the airway? So this is how John McAfee actually died, right? And so this is what I want people to know about the situation.
It seems strange that they would, put him back in I don't know why you'd put him back in the cell. Like if you removed him from the cell, why put him back?
Well, they removed him from the cell to perform, because there was 4 people that came to do, this work on his body. There was like a lot of, they're not security, but a lot of the guards, the guards from the prison, where you could see all of this on the video footage, were standing around. So I guess to have more space, they brought him out, and right in front of the door of his cell, they brought him out and laid him on the floor and did their work.
No, I understand taking him out.
Right.
I don't understand why
they put him back.
Yeah, like you put at that point, you think, okay, well, he's deceased. Let's place him on a structure.
Right.
Let's go ahead and move him to the hospital, the morgue, whatever.
Right.
Like to put him back in, to photograph him in his cell, and leave the shoestrings around his neck. Mm-hmm. Whether they would say, because they might say, oh no, we just wanted photographic evidence that he died in the cell and that it was as a result. Like I'm sure there's a reason they're going to say why they did that, but it's still strange. It feels like you're staging it.
Yeah.
You don't need to stage it I don't need to stage something to help verify that I found this person in his cell.
Right.
I just tell you I found him in his cell. We pulled him outside. We moved. To put him back, it almost seems odd. That seems
quite
odd.
Questionable.
Well, the whole thing always seemed odd, and I don't know a ton about the case. Mm. And typically, when I think I know a lot about a case, and I'm talking to the person who actually knows, I realize, wow, I didn't know anything about the case. But I just always thought it was super odd, and maybe this is wrong, that prior to them finding him, that within a few days he had texted or tweeted, whatever it was, he'd sent a message out saying that he wasn't thinking of ending his life, harming himself. Mm-hmm. He wasn't depressed. He wasn't this.
Wasn't wanting to rage quit, as I've seen some people comment.
Right.
So what actually was happening when he was in prison, I was tweeting for him.
Okay.
So I talked to him every day while he was in prison, 3 times a day. The phone calls were 8 minutes apiece. And so if he had a tweet from me, he would, first dictate that to me, and then, we'd go on with our conversation. So the tweet that you're referencing, the a la Epstein, if something happens to me, I didn't do it to myself, or it was no fault of my own. So I tweeted that out for him. And that was actually when he was first arrested. So I think, or when he was first put in prison, I think that was sometime in October.
Because he was already
2020.
thinking.
It was, yeah. Well, because, prison and the hospitals are the easiest places to whack someone. Right. If that's what you're looking to do, they bear this out in movies.
Yeah. Well, those are always the
because that's truth.
Easiest place to escape.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
That's why they always try and get themselves moved to the hospital. Why? It's got the lowest security.
Yeah.
I only have to breach one level of security to get out of the hospital, which is the guards that are standing outside the room, as opposed to a prison, which got multiple layers of it.
Right.
But what was his concern? Why did he feel somebody was after him?
Right.
Was there something specific?
Well, there's I met John not long after he was deported from Guatemala back to the States, and my understanding is that all of his problems sort of derived from what happened in Belize. So John moved to Belize because his nephew had passed away. His nephew was like his son, and so he just kind of wanted a change, and he moved to Belize. I don't know why he picked Belize, but it was, very beautiful from the pictures that I've seen. And while he was there, he began working on a topical antivirus. So it was, meant to just kind of heal you of any ailments. And he came up with this idea because he was getting bit up in the jungle by all kind of bugs and stuff. So it was a solution for himself first. And he was giving out free samples to the villagers, right? And I'm not sure how long he had been living there, but he said that he had 2 representatives come, I'm assuming from the leading political party, and ask if he would consider giving a donation. And for that, he would be given all sorts of perks, land, women, whatever, tax breaks. And he politely declined. And so I think he said a week after that, they came and raided his property. He was held for 14 hours, handcuffed outside. They came in and they pretty much destroyed his lab, shot his dog, which was not okay. He was very upset about that. But anyways, they said that he had illegal firearms, but he produced licenses for all of his firearms. And he was cleared of all wrongdoing. And so then I think it was another week after that, those same representatives came back and asked if he reconsidered his donation, and he said, F you, get off my property. So this, for John, began a war for him, right? Because he wanted to find evidence that he had been set up for this raid, and he wanted an apology from the prime minister. And so what he decided to do, being John McAfee, is he decided to gift laptops with keystroke logging information, spyware, on the laptops to secretaries, girlfriends, boyfriends of high up officials within the government. So whether that was in the police, in the prime minister's office, wherever he needed. And they gladly took these gifts. And so over the course of maybe the next 6 months or so, I think it was, John was collecting all of this information, and none of it was related to what he was looking for, which was that he was set up for this raid. But instead he found that there was human trafficking, drug trafficking, murder for hire at the highest levels within the Belizean government.
Right. It's basically a mob. The mob.
Right.
The mob is running the country.
Basically. And so so this was bad enough on its own. And then also you have to think what type of people would be laundering money through this area, or would have an offshore account in this area, or right. So we're not just talking about little Belize, right? We're talking possibly about
cartels,
yes,
other countries. Yeah, I understand.
Wealthy Americans or whatever.
First, can I say, I love the fact that you gift the computers.
That was John. You know, that he just didn't want to be messed with. You know, he just wanted to be free to live his life however he saw fit, as long as he wasn't hurting anyone, you know? So he's collecting all of this information, and he has women going through the information, kind of trying to find what's relevant to John, right? So one of these women was actually sleeping with someone within the GSU, which is the Gang Suppression Unit in Belize, and they were having pillow talk or whatever, and so she spills the beans of what she's been doing, this work she's been doing for John McAfee. And so that's how it's found out that he's collecting all of this information. And that's when his problem started with Belize. And so that was sometime in April or May, June of 2012. So once that happened, he kind of was on the run, on the island. He had different, places where he was staying. So he was having to hide out there on the island. And then his neighbor was murdered, which he, always said to me that he felt like it was a botched hit on him, that they just went to the wrong house because they lived not far from each other on the same stretch of beach. So that's what he thought, that it was just a botched hit.
That's very possible. I mean, I actually know of cases where literally somebody had moved. They ended up killing the person that had moved in there, or they just went to the wrong house. Hell, the law enforcement will raid the wrong house all the time. All the time.
Yeah.
4 houses down. Sometimes it's the wrong street, like all kinds of things. You got a judge to sign off on this. You got all this stuff, and you and there's 40 guys involved, and none of you had the right address.
Right.
So yeah,
it's a bit scary when you think about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's where his issues started as far as it relates to that. And then one other thing I would like to share about Belize. Now, mind you, this is all information John had given me, and he's spoken about this, before he died in many interviews. But the dogs that he had. So what happened with the dogs? Because I know I've heard reports that, it was, John had done this because it was retribution for this gentleman poisoning the dogs. But John was under the belief that it was actually someone from the government that poisoned his dogs. And it was actually 9 of his dogs that were poisoned, and he had to shoot them because they were like bleeding out of their mouths and their butts, and it was really, really bad. The majority of the dogs, I think he said he had something like 25 dogs, but they were all mostly strays. I think maybe 3 or 4 dogs he actually brought with him from, the States when he moved there. But the dogs were just dogs that he had collected from the island.
Right.
Because that's just who John was, That, again, just kind of answering questions that you're not answering or asking. But just, I know I've seen things, and so I just try to clear this up.
Yeah, I was going to say, because I've seen, just listening to different documentaries or videos, like it's kind of inferred, or like, okay, all John's dogs were poisoned and died, and then the next day the neighbor died, and then John eventually leaves on the run because he believes the government there is, thinks he did it, or is trying to set him up for doing it. It's kind of the story.
Yeah. That's the narrative that I've always heard.
Right. And just to clear something else up, he actually was never wanted for murder. That was never the thing. He was wanted for questioning.
Right.
That's it. They wanted to question him. And, he offered many times to be questioned anywhere outside of Belize, but he was not going to return to Belize to be questioned, about what happened. But he was willing to answer questions,
So what happens? So eventually you're saying he was deported, or did he flee?
So he did flee from Belize. So what happened was he managed somehow to make it to Guatemala with Samantha and the 2 Vice reporters that were traveling with him. And once he got to Guatemala,
who's Samantha? Samantha
was one of his girlfriends. Oh, I glossed over this part of the story. So John had a harem, as it's been described, of women in Belize, and these were, I'm assuming, working girls. I don't want to besmirch anyone's reputation, but I know a few of them were, and John was kind of a collector of broken people, if you will, because maybe there was a part of him that wanted to fix that, and there was a little brokenness in him. I mean, we all
Yeah.
have a little brokenness in us. And so these girls were actually something that caused me to want to jump in head first with John was the stories that he told about Amy M. Schweiler. She was one of the main girls that was there, but he put her through school. She got an education. She learned to speak English. He built her a home. She, from what I last heard, she still had the home, had her family living there. She was working for one of the wealthiest men on the island in Belize. So, I mean, completely turned her life around, just meeting John. And so, anyway, Samantha was one of his girlfriends that he traveled with. She was kind of helping him to be his eyes and ears, if you will, because he had to be, incognito, so she would go out and, I guess check how things are going if the cops are out or whatever. And so she was traveling with him, as well as Robert King. And I think the other gentleman's name was Rocco Castoro. So this was a popular story because they actually took a picture with John and said, we're with McAfee suckers, but they forgot to take the EXIF data off. So as soon as they shared the picture on Twitter, I think it was, now the world knew exactly where John was. So again, he had to make a mad dash out of there. He was able to connect with Samantha's, I believe it was her uncle, who was the ex something very high up attorney general, I believe he was. And so he sent his driver for John and the team, and they all rode down to wherever they were, to wherever he got arrested. I'm sorry, I'm kind of futzing this up, but anyways, long story short, it was this ex-attorney general, who got him safely to the hotel, where he had to then turn himself in with Interpol, and after that, they I guess a case was brought that John wouldn't have to be sent back to Belize, that he could actually get back to America. So they filed some paperwork within the courts, but in the meantime, they needed time to file these things. So that's when John faked the heart attack. And, once he got the clearance that all the paperwork was in, he was magically fine.
Felt much better.
Yeah.
It's funny that
yeah.
Mexicans will do this. They'll get arrested in the United States and be sentenced, and then to get extradited back so they don't have to finish their 20-year sentence in the U.S., they'll pay kind of like a district attorney or some type of an attorney in Mexico to file an indictment against them in Mexico, and then they'll petition the United States saying, hey, we want to do that's called there's something called it's where, hey, they'll serve their time in Mexico.
Yeah.
And so they've only have to serve a third of their time in the United States. They've served the third, and we have an indictment. We want them to come here so we can prosecute them. And so based on the prisoner exchange or whatever that the program is, they say, okay, well, yeah, there is an indictment. Yeah, he's done 1/3. Okay. And then they move him. And as soon as he gets to Mexico, they drop the charges and they walk off.
Right.
So, and that happens all the time.
Yeah.
It's just a way to work the system.
Yeah.
So I never occurred to me the United States would do it, because, the United States is so, above board. They wouldn't do it. They wouldn't do anything underhanded.
Of
so
course
I'm
not.
shocked that someone would have done something along those lines.
Yeah. So, so he made it back to the States, and that's where our story began. Actually, here in Florida, Miami, South Beach, I was working as a prostitute. I had been working as a prostitute for almost 10 years prior.
For 10, how
almost
old are
10
you?
years.
Will you still be? You're
42.
Right now?
Yeah.
Okay. And how old were you then?
I was, when I met John, I was getting ready to turn 30.
Okay.
I was 29. Yeah. So, I had a pimp. I was in an extremely violent situation. He was very abusive. And so, when I met John, I was just in a different space. I come from a very religious background. I'm the youngest of 5, 4 now. My brother's passed away, but youngest of 5. Grew up in the Bay Area, San Francisco, Oakland, Hayward area, and with two parents. My parents are still married. My father's a minister. My grandfather, my mom's dad was a pastor. He had his own church. So I grew up in, that was the environment I grew up in.
How do you jump
And
from
yeah,
that
I know.
to
Oh goodness. So I think, well, for me, at 15, I was raped, right? I was violently raped, and not realizing this at the time, but in hindsight, looking at it, I think I just wanted to take my power back. I wanted to understand what it was that was powerful enough to make someone violate me in this way. Obviously there's some power there that
Mhm.
I need to learn how to exercise and use, and so I became very promiscuous after that. Then fast forward, I meet this pimp. I didn't know he was a pimp. He was just a guy I wanted to have a one night stand with, and that's all it was supposed to be. But I ended up getting pregnant, and
this is in
so
Oakland?
yes,
Okay.
yeah, and so pregnant, not married, religious family is a problem. So instead of just letting it be a one night stand, I tried to make it into a relationship. Okay. And then he tells me the pimp, he tells me about a girl who he went to school with. She was an escort. And, all you have to do is go out on dates and keep them company, whatever. And, in my mind, I'm like, okay, that doesn't sound right. Like, that doesn't sound like people are just getting paid to just go out on dates with lonely
Right.
old men. But anyways, I went for it. And my first time was super easy. It was a hand job. Got paid $300. The guy was just as nervous as I was. Um, Probably was his first time. He was just happy probably to get not get arrested or not get rolled. But anyways, so I mean that's how when you're venturing into criminal activity, that's usually what gets you hooked, right? The ease in which you are able to accomplish
hmm
whatever you're going out to accomplish. So
Yeah, it's always slow.
yeah.
Nobody quits their job working at Walmart and then
Mhm.
pulls off a takeover bank
Right.
robbery for $2 million. Like
Right.
it's
No.
incremental. It's very
Right.
small
Exactly.
steps.
Exactly. But for me, $300 in, that short amount of time, and so for me, it just made sense, like I get to say who, I get to say when, I get to say how much, I get to have power over my body, and get paid to do
Yeah,
these
and you're not
things. And so,
money that you're not going to make working at Walmart.
right, exactly. And I've got kids. I had two at the time. I had a daughter before I met the pimp. And so I just wanted to get out of my parents' house, and whatever was going to help me do that as quick as possible, that's what I was willing to do. And so that is kind of the mindset with which I went into prostitution, as well as a little bit of feeling like, I was irredeemable. And if there was a God, then, well, he could never love me. He would never, because I've done all of these things. I was ruined good, before I got into prostitution. That just really um, altered the way that I saw myself. And so I just felt like also that was just my punishment. The pimp was my punishment for not being obedient, for not, going to church and doing the things that my parents said to do. So this kind of, I hope, explains how I went from, that start with my family to being a prostitute, because obviously no girl is, a little girl growing up or saying, when I grow up, I want to be a prostitute, or I want to be, that's just not happening. But there are just things that happen in one's life that one way or another leads to that.
How do you jump um, from California to Florida?
So there was a lot of traveling for the work. I was working on the streets mostly in the beginning, and then I began working online, Craigslist, Backpage, Arrow's Guide. Um, and so I was doing a lot of traveling before I made it to Florida. So I've been to Arizona, Phoenix, Arizona, Denver, Colorado for a little bit, Vegas, of course, Vegas. Let's see, the DMV area, DC, Maryland, Virginia. Just working the different hostros, as they're called. there and then working online as well. And I eventually made it to Florida the first time 2011. So I was there for a good little stretch of time before I met John.
How did you meet him?
So I was so I was actually at home and I was sleeping because it was a slow, I think it was like the middle of the week, and I didn't want to go out, but my pimp was like, "Why aren't you outside?" So I had to get up and go out. And apparently John had been in town already and he was top of the news, but I didn't watch the news, so I didn't know. So I go out onto Ocean Drive. There's the Mangoes Club and the Clevelander. I don't know if you're familiar with those at all. Okay. They're kind of popular night spots. And so we were at the Clevelander. Nothing was really happening. And I had happened to park my car across the street from John's hotel, which was the Beacon Hotel. And me and my girlfriend, who was another hoe that was working for my pimp, we were walking back to the car, and I actually saw John standing outside of Johnny Rockets talking to one of the workers. And as I'm walking by, we meet eyes, and I smiled, and he smiled and nodded, but I kept walking because I just did a quick assessment of him, and I was like, no, he looks broke and he doesn't look interested. So yeah. He looks broke. So funny. But he did. He just looked very disheveled. He had on a suit that was just, a little bit beat up. He just didn't look like what one would think John McAfee should look like, right? So I kept walking, and for whatever reason I turned back to look at him, and I saw that he was looking at my butt. And so he kind of gave this like sheepish sort of, what are you going to do? But I still kept walking because, again, my assessment was he was broke. He wasn't interested. And when I got to his hotel, the night security came outside, and I was just asking them, hey, what's going on? What's in town? Are the cops out tonight? That's kind of, just kind of getting a temperature check of, the evening. And he happened to look down towards the Johnny Rockets and saw John, and he said, well, you know who that is? And I was like, no. He said, that's John McAfee. I was like, okay, who's that? And so he said, well, do you know the McAfee antivirus? And I said, yeah. He said, well, that's the guy that created it. And I said, oh, really?
And you turned around and started walking back.
Yeah. Well, I hesitated a little bit because I still wasn't sure. I'm like, well, he's probably not going to go for it. But I was like, okay, what's the worst that can happen? So by this time, I didn't see him. So we kind of jogged a little bit back down the street. And he was now at the News Cafe, which is not much further away from where he originally was. And he was talking to the night staff there. And he was smoking a cigarette. And so I asked him for a cigarette. And as he was lighting my cigarette, he said, what are you girls out here doing? Are you drugging and rolling old men? To which I responded, we don't use drugs. And so this sparked his intrigue because obviously, he let me know what, who I was, and I let him know, well, this is who I actually am. So anyways, it was just, I guess, something that just caught his attention, and he was like, okay, I would like to talk to you, come and have a coffee with me. So we sat down, and, I went through my spiel. Are you interested in some company? We could do 2 for 1, a little chocolate vanilla swirl, or if you just want vanilla, if you just want chocolate, whatever, just to get it out of the way.
Yeah.
And he was like, no, I'm really not interested. I said, okay, good. I said, so who are you? What brings you into town? And he's a little offended that I don't know who he is, or that I hadn't heard of him or whatever. And so he just begins to share his story with me. Yeah, it's funny, right?
Because I immediately think of Anchorman when he says, I'm kind of a big deal.
Yeah. Yeah. So he just told me his story, everything that had happened with him in Belize, everything I just went through with you guys and explained about Belize. This is why I'm able to tell it, because he told it to me that first day that we met, but I've heard him tell it, many times after that, and his story never changed.
Right.
Which is why I believe his version of what happened to him. And after, maybe 2 hours, he asked me if I could get rid of my girlfriend because she was high on Molly and not really contributing much to the conversation. And so I did ask her to leave. And he, we hung out a little longer, and he asked me to come back to his room with him. And so we get to his room really quickly. I'm not going to give you all the gritty details, but whatever. Anyways, we get to his room, and he's like standing by the bed, and he's like rocking it up and down on his tippy toes. He's like looking like really super shy. I'm like, what is happening right now? And he said, can we just cuddle? And I was like, yeah, sure, no problem. But in my head, I'm like, okay, what is cuddling, right? Like, what sort of kinky sex thing is cuddling,
Right.
right? I'm not thinking it's just cuddling. And I was like, okay, well, whatever it is, I'm sure I could do it. So stupid. And he went to the bathroom, we got in the bed, and that's all we did. He laid his head on my shoulder, and he was asleep in 5 minutes. And he just like wrapped his whole body around me and slept like, yeah, I guess like he hadn't in a long time. So it was a really nice night for me as well. I got some really much needed rest myself. And so anyways, next morning he's up early because he has an interview to do. And, he said, you can go and you can order breakfast, just charge it to the room. And then he said, will you be here when I get back? And I was like, really? Like, you want me to stay? Like, this is not normal. But I was like, yeah, I'll be here when you get back. So I go down for breakfast. He goes to have his interview. I think it was with CNBC or something like that. So while I'm having breakfast, I go, again, downstairs outside. I'm sitting outside. So, you're right there on Ocean Drive. So there's seating out front of the hotels, and, can look at the scenery. So I'm sitting there by myself, and this cab pulls up and parks in front of, the hotel. And the cab driver gets out and walks straight to me. And he says, hi, do you know John McAfee? And I'm like, no, I don't know who you're talking about.
Well, why? Why did you say no?
Well, because I don't know who that man is. I'm not going to say, oh yeah, I was just spent the night with him. No, I'm going to say no. I don't know who you're talking about, because no one knows that I was with him, right?
Well, McAfee obviously told him to come get you.
But why? But well,
You didn't
no.
think, okay.
So I'm like, no, I don't know John McAfee. I don't know who you're talking about. And he was like, yeah, right. Okay, so just tell John McAfee that his cab driver is here. And so I was like, well, I don't know who that is. And so when John actually got back to the hotel, I told him about this gentleman, and he said, I don't have a cab driver. Right. And so for me, see, immediately I'm thinking, how would anybody know that I'm
I
with
would have
John?
assumed somebody had to. The only person that would have known would have been McAfee. He would have called the cab driver
Right.
and told him, hey.
But I was staying at his hotel, right? I was supposed to be there when he got back from the interview. You understand?
Yeah, it's odd.
I mean, and obviously,
It is odd.
the girl that I was with, she would have told the pimp. Actually, she did tell the pimp, and all of the pimps and hoes by that time knew, right? But not to send a cab driver to me to say, hey, tell John McAfee his cab driver's out front. So he's immediately on high alert now. And he told me as he's, once we got through that part, he said, well, I want you to go downstairs and check out these guys at this table. He said, they were, sitting there waiting for me. They just, I didn't really fully grasp what was going on with these guys at the table, but he was concerned about them. So I went down, but I didn't see them. And, so he decided that we should go out for lunch. So we did. We went down on Lincoln Drive. And as we're sitting for lunch, he's kind of pointing people out to me and saying, see, this guy, he's got a gun. He's got a gun in his pocket, and I can really see, I could see a bulge. It looked strange. It didn't look like a cell phone. So I'm getting a crash course, in what he's had to live through, I guess. It's
So
just
he's
being on alert,
So he feels like people are watching him all the time. This is
Yes.
FBI or no?
This is, so this is, okay, my assumption still is that this is something that just carried from Belize, right? Because now you're not far, from Belize in
Right.
Miami, right? So I wasn't exactly certain, but as our relationship progressed, it kind of,
So he believes this is some kind of Belize law enforcement?
no,
or
not law enforcement.
Okay, then so basically as a result of the laptops,
Yeah.
it's known that he has information on the Belize government, potentially multiple things going on, but mainly what governments do in South American countries.
Yeah.
What the government does, in one of the ways to make money, because they don't have a lot of money,
Right.
is they launder money. One of the things they do, like launder money for cartels. And so I'm assuming the fact that he has this information, and it's not like it's hearsay. He's got solid receipts. That's what they say now, Colby.
Yes.
It's called
Yes,
receipts,
he's
which
got
is really
the receipts.
evidence. But he's got, ironclad evidence
Yes.
that different people within the Belize government are laundering money. And so he thinks that maybe they're trying to send somebody, get him into a position where they can take him out, so that.
Well, not take him out.
No,
just
to
collect him. No, collect him.
Oh, they want to pick him up
because they want it.
They want to have a
the
conversation.
information. They want the information. Yeah, they want to just chat about the weather. Yeah,
chit-chat.
Yeah. So that is what he believed. And I should also go back really quickly to the night that we met. As we're talking, so he's sitting with his back. So he's facing the street, right?
Yeah.
And as he's sitting there talking to me for these hours, I'm watching him watch people. He's watching the cars, taking mental note. Now, these are things that I would do anyways, because, being a prostitute, you have to be smart, otherwise you don't survive that long without being smart, being street smart. So I noticed immediately that there was something happening that he was concerned about, which is why the cab driver the next morning for me was a concern, because he was already showing a concern for his safety, right? And so, again, we're back at lunch, the next day, watching people, and there's this vehicle that keeps circling the block the entire time while we're sitting having our lunch, and so I pointed out to him. So it's just a lot of things, a lot of strange things happening. Again, I'm not sure what exactly is happening, but there is something that's happening. Why, I wasn't sure either. But I'm, again, assuming because of the information that he had, they needed to get it back. They needed to, and they couldn't just whack him because, then where would the information go? Who has it? How would they get it back? So we spent a couple more days together in Florida. He eventually leaves and goes to Tennessee. I believe he said he was going. I'm not sure if that's where he went, but maybe like a week later. Well, before he left, he said, I'll call you in a week and I want you to come and meet me. Come meet me in Tennessee. And so a week goes by and I do go indeed and meet him in Tennessee. And he's bought a pickup truck and he's driving to Portland, and he wants me to, come with him. So we go on this 3-week trip. First of all, it does not take 3 weeks to go from Tennessee to Portland. That's
Right.
just a long time, insanely long time. But it was a good time, right? I really, really enjoyed the ride because he was just a fascinating person. Like, I was smitten. Can I just say that as a hoe? I was absolutely smitten. Right? Like in the most squarest sense, right? Like how a girl likes a guy, right? And
you're definitely going to get to know somebody over a road trip.
Yeah. And it was a good road trip. Like, we listened to books on CD. It was awesome. It was really cool. And so, but I didn't know. He would tell me later that what he was actually doing and why it took so long was that he had like spots off road where he had buried, I guess emergency stashes, and he was going and collecting those because he would disappear for hours, like sometimes 5-6 hours at a time, just gone, and I'd be at the hotel waiting for him to come back. And so that's what he was actually doing. And that's why it took so long for us to get from Tennessee to Portland. But in the meantime, the pimp is calling me. And he's calling me because he wants to know what's going on. Where's the money? Has he paid you yet? How much is he going to pay you? All of these stupid things that I can't talk to you. I'm sitting in the car next to this person that you're asking me all this information about. You think I'm going to get on the phone and just say, oh, yeah, he's right here. And that's stupid because he's not even supposed to know about you. So you're blowing my cover, right? So I was juggling with this as well, yeah. And it was just a really interesting time. Anyways, we finally make it to Portland, and I have to go back to Miami because I have a court case that's closing up, right? So it's just going to be my last appearance that I'm going to make in the court case related to my prostitution. So I have a very extensive criminal record for soliciting, mostly 99% of my criminal record is for soliciting, which is basically just being in an area known for prostitution, not necessarily being caught in the act or anything like that. So I was going to just appear before the judge. I had done what I needed to do. I stayed out of trouble. I did the diversion program, and they were going to just close out the case. So I needed to leave. But before I
still
left,
have to show up.
Right. Yes, you do. But before I did that, John said to me, he said, listen, I'm not going to take care of a grown man. Right. So basically, he was just letting me know that he knew about the pimp. Right. And so he said, if you're going to come back here and be with me, then that's what you're going to come and be with me. But you're not going to send money to anyone. And so that was kind of just his ultimatum that he laid on the line there. And so I went back to Miami, closed out the case, and was fully intending on leaving that life and the pimp behind me, once I got back to Portland. So I actually did do that. The pimp called me, and I let John talk to him, put John on the phone, and John was like, listen, she doesn't want to be with you anymore. And, so just leave her alone, whatever. And he was like, F that, I'm coming to Portland. And so John told him that if you come to Portland, you will leave in a body bag. And so he didn't like that. It wasn't a threat. It was just facts of life, that if he came, because obviously you're coming as a threat to me.
Mm-hmm.
And
you're not coming as a supportive character witness in your court appearance.
Right. So that ended that situation for a time, and we'll get there eventually to the rest of that story. So, just one other little unique thing about this I want to tell. So we're in Portland. We're staying at the 50 Shades Grey Hotel, the hotel that was in the movie. And, John's looking for a place for us to stay. And so his security didn't like me, for obvious reasons. And, he thought that I was just, there to, try to make some money, get some money. And while I was in Miami, so when I went back to Miami after we got to Portland, while I was there, the pimp was talking about, okay, well, how much money is he going to pay you for going on this road trip? He had given me money to cover my rent and car note, right? So I was able to pay that, but he hadn't given me anything like cash and pocket cash. And so, the pimp is talking about all these things. Well, you can take pictures of him and sell it to the tabloids because everybody's wanting to know where he is, or, we can rob him. All of these grand ideas that the pimp has. And so he was like, you should see if you could get like maybe 20 grand out of him, 50 grand. And I was like, he's not going to pay me that amount of money for what? Like, I didn't, we're not doing anything, I'm not sure what his plans were or what his ideas were. But anyways, fast forward back to me being in Portland, the his security, we actually arrived at the same time. His security was coming from Tennessee. I was coming from Miami. And we get to the hotel. John's in the elevator with his security. And all of a sudden, his security's like, yeah, I brought that $50,000 that you asked for. And so I'm like, well, that's strange. Like, why would you announce it that way? It was super, super weird. And so apparently they thought, or the security thought, that I was going to take the money and run, right? So it's in cash. It's in the room with us. John leaves for some hours. And I'm like, I got to get out this room because I really want to look at it because I've never seen 50,000 cash.
Right.
So I just want to look at it, but I don't want to touch it because I don't want anyone saying anything about anything. So I leave the room and I go to smoke a cigarette standing outside. And, I'm just kind of assessing the scene in the area. I see someone sitting in a parked car. And then I see this gentleman walking down the street. He was an older man, looked like a bum, walking down the street. And he's like limping, right? Limping down the street. And he has on a white shoe and a black shoe. And as he gets closer to me, all of a sudden his gait changes. And he's now standing straight up, and he's walking without this limp. And he's looking at me as you're looking at me. basically, if looks could kill, I would have dropped dead right there. And because the assumption again was that I was going to take the money and try to make a run for it, and that's, I guess, he was supposed to intervene, be someone to intervene in that.
Right.
So that's just
This is the
little
whole thing is
things
just
that were
like a test.
yeah, yeah. So these were just little things that were happening. Interesting things that I don't know. I guess I passed the test because I didn't touch the money. I didn't take the money. And John, he said he didn't think that I would have taken it, but obviously
after the fact, did he say like, "Hey, like you passed the test," or is it just kind of like, "Oh, yeah"?
No, he just said I knew you wouldn't take it. You know, and we just kind of life went on. Life went on, and he asked me to be his girlfriend, and he said, this is what I do for my girlfriends: give you a place to stay, give you a car, and you'll have money, and there's just some things that I require, like you're not having sex with people, right, and you're no longer working anymore, right, and so of course, no problem, I can do that. But I got bored very quickly because he was gone a lot. Also, he had, as I like to call them, flavors of the week, flavors of the day, right? Other women who would come, or he would go and see them, whatever. I didn't care because that wasn't the nature of our relationship. I was not looking for exclusivity from him, right? I wasn't looking to be his only one and only. So I was perfectly fine with that. He had one come and stay with us for a couple of months. It was just an interesting time, but I was really, really bored and I wanted to get a job. And he's like, well, you can't get a job. Like I can't, like John McAfee's wife can't be working a 9 to 5, but I needed something to fill my time.
Point, right?
Well, but he said wife.
Okay.
So I've always been his wife in his mind because that's what he referred to me as.
Because the others are just kind of coming and going.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I don't know what the difference was, but that's just what he called me. So, so in this boredom, I wanted to get a dog. So we get a dog, whatever. And I'm really trying to just figure out what I'm supposed to do with myself other than just waiting for John to come home and whatever.
Right.
So, and in the meantime, I'm also going back to California to see my children. My children are living in California with my parents because I asked my dad to take my children because of the situation I was in. I didn't want them to begin getting abused because I couldn't protect them from the pimp,
Right.
And so that was my fear. So they were living with my parents, and I would go and visit them, when they were out of school, summer vacation, holidays, I would go. John would very graciously pay for me to go and visit them. And if they needed money, I would send money. I was able to be sort of the fun mom, if you will,
Do your parents know that you're with McAfee?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, I skipped that part.
What
I'm
are
sorry.
they thinking?
So during the road trip, we actually made a beeline through California, right? Because we could have just went up straight to Portland, but and it was because John felt that it was time for me to go back, right? Because I hadn't seen them for about 7 years. Because my dad, when my dad came and got them from me in Las Vegas, where we were living, he told me that I was never to call, never to come home, never to write. That was just that. And so I honored that. And so it had been about 7 years since I had seen them. I'd been in contact with one of my sisters quite regularly, but as far as my children, I just wasn't allowed to talk to them. So, she would tell me about them, how they were doing.
Right.
And so it was New Year's Day that we showed up to my parents' house, and they were super surprised, like so shocked. And that I was with John McAfee. They were even more surprised. Like how in the world does this happen? Yeah, so I guess just shocked, not really understanding how
But it
the
wasn't a
two of
whole
us met.
turn around, leave.
No.
Okay.
Well, they
that's good.
couldn't because he was at the door with me, right? So maybe they wanted to, but the situation was different.
Right.
I wasn't I wasn't there alone, right? So he kind of was an advocate for me because I'm not sure what my parents thought about me, but I believe that they just thought that I just didn't want to be a mom no more. I wanted to go out and have this wild, crazy life. And that was so far from what actually was going on. I mean, obviously there was, there's good times. You go out, you're clubbing, whatever, because you're working. That's just the environment that you're in, but it's not a good time. So it just wasn't what they thought it was, Anyway, so that's how they came to know that I was with John McAfee, and they just kind of rolled with it. They didn't really ask any questions. It was just, okay, she's with John. Again, they hadn't seen me in so many years, so
right.
It was just what.
So it went as well as could be expected.
Yeah.
So now you want to get a job. He's saying you cannot get a job.
Yeah.
And you want to get a pet.
Yeah. So I have a dog. So we got a dog, Tequila. Yeah. It's a little simple request. So we get this dog, Tequila.
That's a big
She's
deal,
awesome.
by the way. You understand? This has been an argument for 2 years with my wife, and we're not getting a dog.
Why not?
Because where does the dog right now? Do you see what I'm saying? When it'd be different. And I've told her, when we go to a studio and we are no longer doing, of course she's like, you could put the dog in the garage. You could put him in I'm like, no, he sits there and barks nonstop.
Yeah.
And, no. And so there's all these agreements.
Okay.
So now we're moving to a studio. We can get a dog. I even have it in our contract. I even wrote it. Colby read.
Okay.
Colby came over the other day. She pulls out this little agreement that I wrote up. And she's like, she showed Colby. She's like, do you see what he's got written down here? And it's a whole thing. You're taking care of the dog.
Okay.
You feed the dog. You take care of him. You take him to the vet.
Okay.
You walk him. I will walk him occasionally decide.
You say this now.
And that's
when
what
the dog gets here.
He doesn't sleep in the bed. And her whole thing is she's like, you're going to have him in the bed.
Yes.
If you sleep hot at night, you know how disruptive that can be. Whether you're having trouble falling asleep, you're waking up sweating in the middle of the night, or all of the above. That's where Ghost Bed can help. As the makers of the coolest beds in the world, Ghost Bed is your go-to for cooling mattresses, cooling pillows, and cooling bedding. From their signature Ghost Ice fabric to patented technology that adjusts to your body's temperature, every Ghost Bed mattress is designed with cooling in mind. So whether you want a plusher mattress that cushions your shoulders and hips, or a firm option with exceptional support, your Ghost Bed will keep you cool and comfortable all night long. When you purchase a Ghost Bed mattress, your comfort is guaranteed. You can try out your mattress for 101 nights, risk-free, to make sure it's the right fit for you. Plus, they offer free shipping, and most items are shipped within 24 hours. If you're not sure which Ghost Bed is right for you, check out their mattress quiz. You'll answer a few questions and get a personalized recommendation. Even better, our listeners will get 10% off for a limited time. Just visit ghostbed.com/Cox and use code Cox at the checkout. That's ghostbed.com/Cox and use code Cox for 10% off site-wide. You're going to be playing with them.
Yes.
You're going still, these are the rules. They may, we'll alter them later as I see fit. I don't have a dog.
Okay.
So
you've never had a dog?
No, I've had one. I'm saying
it's going to be her dog. Right?
It's her.
That's funny.
It's
not. No, it never works that way. You say this now, it's going to be your dog.
No, I understand.
You're going to love it.
I understand, but I'm saying that's a big deal. Like to me, you see people haphazardly get dogs, and then 6 months later, they want to get rid of the dog.
Yeah.
I think it's just a big commitment. You have to think about it.
Yeah.
Well, it's good that you say that now, because that's what I say now. I'm like, this is your dog. Remember when we got this dog? Like, you remember what I said?
Yeah.
Like, this is your responsibility.
Oh, listen, that's what I want to be at 4 o'clock in the morning when she's like, "Can you take the dog out?" And I'm not taking your dog out. You get out of bed. So anyway, I hear you.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's awesome.
You get a dog.
You're gonna love the dog.
Oh.
So we get a dog. Well, actually, what I did was I wanted a little cute little doggy, a little purse dog, and so I bought a dog for $2,000.
Oh my God.
Found one online, and he was like, "You're not spending $2,000 on a dog." He's like, "Get your money back, and I will take you to the rescue, and we'll go get a dog." So we we ended up going to rescue and we found Tequila. She's a red-nosed pit bull and she was awesome. And so now I have this dog. I have, just something to keep me a little less lonely. And in March, my oldest daughter, had a birthday, and I thought it would be a good idea. So stupid. I just wanted to floss on the pimp, right? I wanted to floss on the pimp. And if you guys don't understand what that means, I just wanted to show off, like look at what I'm doing with my life and look what he's doing for me. This is something that you never did in the almost 10 years that I was with you. I'm able to take my daughter. We had this awesome birthday party at Great America. It was great. All her friends got to go. And, I had a car and, I'm living life. And so super stupid because obviously he knew about it, I should say as well, I don't know if our apartment was bugged or anything, or my car was bugged. I just assumed that it was, right? So I assumed that he knew everything that was happening, because I go back really quickly to the $50K that was brought by the security. That's what we discussed in our house, in our condo in Miami. So how would he have hered that specific number, If
I was thinking maybe
not
he gave you a cell phone.
No. No, I had my own cell phone, and obviously that could have been, used to listen in. But so the assumption was that I was being watched and listened to at all times. And so John was very upset about this, and we end up getting into a fight. He kicks me out. But he kicks me out with nothing. Well, not nothing. I mean, with my clothes and the dog. He kicked the dog out too. And
wait, did I miss something? Why did he kick you out?
Because it had to do with me trying to floss and show off for the pimp. Yeah. Also because he had a girlfriend, or a little flavor of the week, and she didn't want me at the house, and so he kicked me out for that as well, because she didn't want me there. So we're out on the street. I have no money. Right. I had a little bit of money. So I called one of my regulars who, would bail me out from time to time in the past. And he sent me a couple $100 so I could get a hotel. So I'm in a hotel, and now I'm trying to think long-term strategy, because I'm thinking for me, it's over. Like, we're done. This situation was good while it lasted. But so I wanted to get back to California with my sister, just to be closer to my family until I figured out what I was going to do. But I didn't want to ask family for money because I didn't think that they would help with that. So I foolishly thought it was a good idea to ask the pimp to send me some money so I can get a plane ticket and leave. So instead of him sending me money, he sends me a client. And so this guy comes and pays me $300. We do our business. And after, he says, so same as the cab driver. So John McAfee, yeah? I was like, nope, I have no idea who you're talking about. And he was like, okay, well, listen, your pimp told me that you know John McAfee, and we're going to have a meeting with your pimp, and we just want to talk to you about John McAfee. So I'm like, okay, whatever. But immediately I'm like, oh, crap, what's happening now? So in this meeting, the gentleman didn't come back, but he's on the phone. He's on speakerphone, and there's another pimp from Portland and another pimp from California that's there with my pimp. And this,
is there like a pimp network? I mean, what? Is that
well, it's a pretty small community. Okay, I guess. So,
like everybody's on a group chat.
Yeah. Well. So yes, I'm here in this room with these three pimps, my pimp included. And the same man that came and paid me is on the phone. And he explains that he is a representative of the Sinaloa Cartel. And they are wanting to collect information on John McAfee. And they want me to do that for them. And so immediately I'm like, hell no, I'm not doing none of that. Like, this is crazy. Like, what is y'all talking about? Now, this is a big no-no. I'm in a room with pimps that aren't mine, right? Mm-hmm. You're supposed to be seen and not heard. So the fact that I was, being vocal about what I ain't going to do was a huge violation. And so my pimp made me go in the bathroom. And while they finished the conversation or whatever. And then he called me out, and the one pimp from California said, I don't give a F if that B-word snitches. I don't know if, can I curse?
Yeah.
Okay. If that bitch snitches, I'm killing her, and I'm killing her family. So I have this threat hanging over me, yeah. And my pimp is like, just relax. They just want you to let him know, what he's doing, who's around, all of this stuff. It's like it's not even a big deal. And I was like, well, first of all, I can't do it because I'm not with him. He
Right.
kicked me out. We're not together anymore. So I don't know what you think I can do for you. And then also, even if we did happen to get back together, if I'm telling you stuff, he's gonna know that I'm the one telling you it.
Right.
So this doesn't make any sense to me. So, I guess John, again, I'm being watched and listened to at all times, right? So he eventually calls me after this meeting has happened, and he comes to the hotel, and so we make up for. I guess we make up, whatever, and I go back with him to the apartment. But I believe that he came because of this meeting that was had, and possibly he kicked me out because maybe there was some conversation that was happening outside of me that I wasn't privy to. And so to see where that went,
So what do you think the concern with the Sinaloa, the member of the Sinaloa cartel? What do you think they only want you to gather information?
Mm-hmm.
Is it that they're concerned that he may be meeting with government officials to turn over this information, or on them, or what?
No, to collect him.
Oh, they're still just trying to
Yes.
trying to get him to a point where he's vulnerable and they can grab him.
Exactly.
Okay.
Right. And they need someone to let them know when that is, right?
Right. Okay.
Okay. So that is the only concern. Again,
The
because
only concern is once again they want to have a chit chat.
right, because whacking him so easy. They could have done that any number of times, but obviously they needed the information. They needed to know where it was. And so so they couldn't just whack him.
Right.
They had to collect him.
So you're back in the apartment.
So I'm back with John, back
You've
in
got
the
the dog
apartment.
back.
Got the dog, got the dog back, and life goes back to what it was prior to me getting kicked out. Except I've got this huge secret. Now I don't tell John. It was a few years before I actually told him what was going on. But again, I'm operating under the assumption that he's, can see all, hear all, knows all, and he did. He would later say that he did.
Yeah, because there's from the moment he gets back to the U.S., like there's no real, there are these huge gaps where I know something would be on the news, something would happen here, something would there, but so there is no real, something that chain that kind of ties everything together. But you would tie that together. Have you ever been interviewed for like a book or anything? Has somebody has to have written a book, right? Like,
no.
Have you written a book?
No, there will be a book. I think one day I would hope so.
Why wouldn't you write the book?
I'm not a writer.
I'm not a writer. It doesn't take much to be a writer. You write like a paragraph or two a day, and you look back a year later and you go, "Holy shit, I got 300 pages done. I'm done." Yeah,
Okay.
you write an outline.
Okay.
Here's the thing: you write a 5 or 6 page outline with just bullet points. Talk about this. Talk about this.
Okay.
You're doing it right now. You're probably going to drop this thing in a chat GPT and it'd do it almost for you. And then you write the outline, and then you kind of go through and it'd be perfect for you. You could start at where you started here.
Okay.
And then I would leave this in. You start at where because that's like, oh my, that is the end.
Yeah.
But then you could jump back to telling an overview of kind of his life. That doesn't even have to be long. That's a chapter. That's maybe 6, 7 pages.
Okay.
Because people kind of know the story.
Yeah.
And it's an interesting story,
It
right?
is very interesting.
So, but you don't have to go super involved in that. And then you can get to the point where things started going wrong, where he sells the company and things start, escalating, and he leaves the United States, and kind of like where the second part of his story change. You could probably do two chapters on his life and leading up to it. And then by chapter 3, he's probably in Belize. You can explain that whole thing over several chapters. And then you get to where you enter the picture. But keep in mind, you don't even have to interview anybody for the book.
True.
For the quotes and stuff, you can go straight to YouTube.
Yeah.
And go to, what was the guy's name we talked about? The Navy SEAL?
Jimmy Watson.
Yeah, you go to him and you just watch that. You could get a transcript of that. You just pull pieces out of when he enters. Like, there's so many interviews. You don't even have to do much interview. You don't have to probably do any interviewing if you didn't want to. You just go to these YouTube, get the transcripts, and just pull out what's helping to tell the narrative that you're laying out. And before you know it, you got a 300-page book written by you, and which may, if done like that, may be the most complete version of his story. And even though his, him making money and the antivirus, selling the company, that whole thing, it's interesting as an entrepreneurial story. Yeah. But what makes it even more interesting is what happens later.
Right.
That's what sets it apart. There's lots of entrepreneurs that had an idea and ran with it, and it turned into something, and they made, whatever, 10 or 100 or 50 million, whatever that number is. There's lots of those guys, which are all interesting, but it's the second part that makes all of it like, oh my God, like what is what's really happening here? Yeah. And you're on the inside knowing what really happened and able to put it together in pieces in a way that nobody else that I haven't heard. You think, you think, well, something's probably happening there. Well, what is it? Well, I know, or at least I know what John thought was happening. Yeah. I know what I saw. I know what he said was happening. I know what. You put it all together, you probably have a more interesting story than just a basic documentary where it's kind of one-sided. But anyway,
that's great advice.
I'm full of good advice. It's pulling the trigger. But you'd be shocked. You think, oh, I'm not a writer. I'm not a writer, but I'm a hell of a storyteller, and you're already telling a great story. You're already subtly kind of gleaning over or giving a very short version of what's not interesting. You're like, well, I need to mention that, so let me mention it, but I'm not going to focus on that. And you're already focusing on what is interesting. You're saying, hey, this is kind of neat. Let me go ahead and expand on that. You're talking about that for 5 minutes, this for 1 minute, this for 7 minutes, this for 2 minutes, because those are, they need to know this, but it's not interesting. Right. But they do need to know it, because I know in 30 minutes from now, it's going to tie back in. Right. You're already doing that. You're already a good storyteller.
Thank you.
So
I appreciate it.
The writing the story, the rest of it, you could drop in ChatGPT, and then you just toy with it. There are no great writers. There are great rewriters. Nobody just sits down and writes an amazing book. Nobody. You write the book, it's dog shit, and you rewrite it 3 different times. It's just tweaking here, tweak here, tweak here. And then before you know it, you give it to somebody, and they walk up to you with tears in their eyes and say, man, that part about your dad, bro, I'm so sorry. And you're like, the fuck just happened? Right. The guy gives you a hug, and you're like, oh my God, I think I got a good story here. Yeah. You don't realize it.
Right. Right, because it's your story.
Right. A fish doesn't realize he's surrounded by water.
Right. Right.
So you're in the place. We got the dog back. McAfee's back in the picture.
Yeah.
Something's going on.
I'm back at the apartment. So the gentleman that was the cartel representative actually worked with John. And because John was they were working on a script, because they were going to do a movie about his life, or a documentary. They had the script, so I think it was supposed to be a movie. So there was, directors, writers he was talking to. And this gentleman, he came to our apartment, and he put something in front of the TV. I'm assuming it's something to listen and watch or whatever. And so knowing that John knows what's happening, I was very surprised that, for one, that he kept this guy around so close, but 2, that he allowed him to put whatever that device was in our house. I think he was setting up the cable. And so it was just a really intense time for me, because I had the pimp calling me nonstop, and why am I not checking in and giving him information? Because he was the go-between. I was supposed to give the information to the pimp and he'd take it to whomever. And, I would just explain, he's watching me. He's suspicious, right? You keep calling me, and there's no way to do it without him knowing that I'm doing it, right? And so very quickly, them asking me to provide information turned into, okay, we're going to give you this. I want you to put it in his food. And it was like some grainy substance. I don't know. It was like in a little baggie. They wanted me to put it in his food. And I remember I was so scared. I was scared that he was going to find it on me. Because I didn't just throw it away. I was like, okay, well, I'm going to put it deep in some drawer or something. I was never going to use it, but I didn't know what to do with it. And so really quickly, we were gonna have dinner one night, right? And we were gonna cook together, but then John got busy on the phone. And so, I was hungry. So I went ahead and cooked. And he came out of the bedroom and he stopped in the doorway and he was like, "Oh, you cooked."
I'm not eating that.
And I was like, "Yeah, I was hungry." And so I said, "Do you want some?" And he's like, "Yeah, sure, I'll take some." And so he's watching me. So what I did was I just stirred everything, gave it a big stir, right? So he could see everything's mixed together, and I took my food and made him, a plate. And so what he did, it was broccoli and I think some sort of pasta and chicken, right? So he took a little bit of each and was like tossing it to the dog, right? And he later would tell me that he did this because he knew that I loved the dog and I would never poison the dog. So if there was something in it, I would not allow him to give it to the dog. So yeah, it was just fun. I mean, little things.
Right.
It was super funny, right? So again, proving the point or proving to me that indeed he did know all. He was watching and hearing and listening. So he knew what was happening, right? And then that turned into, okay, well, let's, because I was driving, John will let me drive him around, right? Which is, I guess, a big no-no in his world as well. Like his security was not happy with me at all. They wanted me gone, whether that was whacked or whether that was just out of his life. I don't know, but they wanted me gone. It was a big deal that I was driving for him, that he got a lot of slack for that. But so anyways, I would drive him around and they, my pimp would say, okay, we'll leave the car parked over here, so they could do something to it, to sort of disable it. So what I would do is when I would go to see my children, I would tell John, listen, don't go out at night by yourself. Let somebody else drive you. Don't park the car over here. Park it in the parking garage. So while they were telling me to do things, I was telling John how to protect himself from the things that they were telling me to do. Right. So it was just a very tricky situation, because I was not on board with what the pimp was trying to do. Not at all. For me, the situation with John was one of a potential escape, right, from the previous version of myself, from that prostitute that I was, from that life completely, from the pimp. But now I've got this added situation of the cartel, But John was going to be, for me, my avenue to get to a better version of myself, to turn over a new leaf or new chapter, whatever, And so that was my goal, right? And so that's why I was telling him, hey, this is how you protect yourself from, well, I didn't tell him this is how you protect yourself, but I'm just saying, do these things, don't deviate from what I'm telling you and you'll be fine. And so, we then began traveling. John was doing like a lot of keynote speeches, and there would be people there that were there to do harm to John. And so I remember distinctly one person, after one of these keynotes that he had given, someone came up to him and said, "Hey, John, here's your drink," and I immediately, took the drink and, tossed it, not with the person seeing, but, I just, interfered with that. And we traveled with security because there was just this constant threat, and now I know of I'm a part of that threat, right? As well as a part of, trying to be the solution or, help him protect himself from the threats. Yes. So in the summer of 2013, the Belizean soccer team came to play soccer in some tournament that was happening in Portland. And when they came, there was like an excessive amount of people that flew in, and not all of them returned when the flight returned. This was what the information John shared. So in our neighborhood, we began to see people that looked Caribbean, people that looked black, that were black, but they weren't black like I'm black. Anyways, there's a difference. So, and that matters because the neighborhood was very white. It was a very white neighborhood. I was probably the blackest person in the neighborhood. So to see these people all of a sudden, this influx of people not really doing anything, didn't move there. They were just kind of milling around, was very concerning, and they were kind of milling around our apartment. Our apartment was right on 20th and Hawthorne, right on the corner. We were on the 4th floor, so we had like an L shape. So we had a view of both roads, the main road, Hawthorne, and then 20th Street. So we could see people kind of hanging out. There was a thrift shop right across from us. There was a pizza shop across this way and a small movie theater. So there would be people just sitting there for hours at a time, just sitting, not doing anything. And so this is very concerning for John. So we had security there in Portland that was traveling with us. He's a biker, he and his girlfriend. And so they actually moved in with us during this time because John was going out of town a lot and he didn't want me to be by myself. So there is a report in the news that John died of an overdose in a Vegas hotel, right? And so he's getting phone calls all
Just out of
day.
the blue?
Yeah, just out of the blue. Just out of the blue. He tweeted actually about it. He said something to the effect of the news of my death has been greatly exaggerated or something like that.
Right.
I don't know. But he was getting phone calls all day from people asking if he was okay, and so then after that, the security was arrested on trumped up charges for abuse. Right? So now we're without our security, and now the story has gone out that John is already dead. Yes? So one evening we are sitting watching, we're binge watching, I think it was Family Guy. And I just happened to look out of our window and I see this pickup truck, and this guy gets out in a work vest and he flashes his flashlight 4 times down our street. And I said to John, hey, this guy just, I don't know what he's doing. He's flashing his flashlight. So the guy does it again when John is there in the window. And he's like, okay, turn the lights off immediately. We turn the light, all the lights are off, TV's off. It's dark, and he's watching. He's got his binoculars, he's watching, he's in the windows, watching what's going on for a couple of hours. And then he calls me and he's like, do you hear a motorcycle idling? Like, no, I don't hear anything. Now I'm tired. And I'm like, I don't hear anything. I don't know what you're talking about. I'm going to go lay down. So I go and lay down. And about 2 a.m, he comes and he wakes me up and he says, get up. They're here. We have to leave right now. Right. He tells me that there was 2 cop cars, an SUV and a garbage truck that pulled up, and they were in front of our building. Right. And so this is the problem. We run out, we run down the opposite end of our hallway, we run down the stairs, and we end up in the parking garage of our apartment. And, John is like running around like a madman, trying to find somewhere for us to hide. So our apartment building is on top of a dentist's office and a coffee shop. And so there was doors that led into the parking garage from these businesses. And so he's trying all the doors, trying to find somewhere for us to hide. So all of the doors were locked. And he goes into the trash room and he's like, okay, get in here in the dumpster. I'm like, I'm not getting in there. That's disgusting. That's nasty. So he's like, fine then. He turns the light off in there and he's trying to figure out where we can hide. So in our parking garage, there was a lower level underground and then the main level and then an upper level. And it kind of worked on an elevator system, right? And so he said, okay, well, can you climb up here? So we climb up and we hide under a car. And I'm sitting there. First of all, I'm thinking like they're going to kick us out of our apartment when they see us on their security camera running like crazy people in the middle of the night in the parking garage. And I'm also like, I don't even know, like, why, how, like, he's lost it. He's lost his mind. He's absolutely crazy. I don't know what's happening. Mind you, also, I should say that in the parking garage, the lights are motion detected, right? So the lights are on while we're moving around doing all this crazy stuff. So we get settled under the car. Eventually, the lights go off, right? And then maybe 5 or 10 minutes after that, we hear the click of the key fob. When you put the key fob to come into the parking garage, there's a very loud click
Mhm.
of it unlocking. So we heard that click, and then the lights come on, but you don't hear anyone, you don't see anyone. Okay, and the lights stayed on all night, right? Now, you could feel the movement, but you couldn't hear anyone walking. You couldn't, they weren't talking. And in the lobby, there was like lot of commotion, a lot of noise. And you could also hear the garbage truck idling. Well, what I assumed was the garbage truck. They have a very distinct sound.
Right.
So you could hear that idling out front as well. Um, so again, a lot of commotion happening in the lobby. Um, and then you hear the click again, and the garage door is opening now for into the parking garage. And so it opens up, you hear the garbage bin being rolled out, right? And it's, lifted and all the things. The garbage truck is doing its thing to empty the bin, and it's rolled back in, and then maybe half hour later you hear this loud fuck in the lobby. Yeah? Because we weren't in there. Because the assumption was that we were in there because the light was turned off. I think this was something that John always made reference to. I'm not sure why that was important, but I guess psychologically, if you're looking for someone and you go and you think that they're in this trash room and the light's off in there, then you would think that they would probably be hiding in there. I don't know. But we were just literally right there. And honestly, if they would have just whoever was walking in there, if they would have just bent over, they would have seen us underneath the car hiding there. And so we stayed under there after that, big loud F bomb.
Right.
We stayed under there. There was still some commotion happening. Then you heard the garbage truck then leave eventually. The lights stayed on for a little longer, maybe another hour or so, and then they went off. But we stayed under there. And then our neighbor was the first to leave. Our neighbor was someone that had moved in newly. So our apartment was on the end of the hall, and this apartment across from us, these people had just moved in maybe the month before. And so they were the first to leave, maybe about 6 in the morning. And also, I should say that our building had been sold month prior, like just randomly out of the blue. Like we had Virginia, she was a sweet lady. That was our apartment manager of the building. And she put a notice on the door saying that they were going to, the building had been sold. There's going to be new management. And then the very next day, we had new management. And this gentleman was not really management, really. He came in like maybe noon, barely did anything. And he was just kind of a warm body, if you will. And so the next person to come in was actually him. And he came in about 7 in the morning, and he went directly into the I guess surveillance room. I don't know what you would call it, but where they have the cameras,
Right.
right? He stayed for maybe a minute or two, and then he left. And so, as it's getting later and later, I tell John, we might, need to get out of here now because, in case someone comes to go to work and they see us under their car. So we get up, we go back to our apartment. We call the girlfriend of the security that had been arrested and tell her what happened. She comes to meet us because now we're leaving. So we're packing up what little bit of stuff we needed, the essentials, and we were going to leave. And as we were leaving, our neighbor, whose apartment is next to the elevator, she's coming out as well. And so John happens to say to her, "Hey, did you notice anything strange happening last night?" And she was like, "Yeah, I was just gonna go down and talk to the manager." She said it was really loud. There was a lot of commotion happenings. Like people were, in the hallway talking really loudly. This was just confirmation of, what we had just lived through. So we get downstairs. The manager's there, and he doesn't see us come out of the elevator. Our neighbor goes and she's talking to him, and then he turns around and he sees us and he goes white like a ghost. John just mentioned to him as well, what was going on last night. And so what I thought was strange about his response was that he didn't say, "Well, yeah, you guys were like, what were you doing in the parking garage? You look stupid." Or like, "What were you running around for?" But the fact that he completely avoided that was just telling to me, because I mean, I guess I just assumed that maybe he was in on it or he knew about what happened or what should have happened. Just his response to seeing us there was very telling. So later John finds out that I guess this was a big operation. It was massive. It had to have been massive. And it was something that the pimp didn't know about. And I think for me, it scared me because it meant that there was something happening outside of what I knew about that was a lot bigger than what I did know about. Yeah, because this was a massive operation to buy an apartment complex, to put in your people, right? To have this whole setup of maybe they were real police, maybe they weren't. I don't know. Garbage truck, all of the things, all of the costs that would have incurred. And so now I'm like super spooked. So we left Portland and we made our way to Utah, and um we stayed there for a couple of days. Sean, I guess, just trying to figure out where we should go next. And so eventually the girlfriend of the security, she left and went back to Portland, and we made our way to Colorado Springs. So then, as after we'd been there for a few months, John does an interview with the Fox News. I forget the interviewer, but I remember it very well because when John would do these interviews, he would ask that they not describe or tell where he is because, they'll say, "Oh, we have so and so from this,
Right.
Right. So he'd asked that they did not do that. And so they were honoring that, when he was doing his interviews. We would go into focus on the family. They had a big, studio there. So we would go in there and do the filming there. And on this particular interview, the gentleman said, "We have John McAfee from, Colorado Springs." And so, we both noticed it immediately. And that was not okay because then, it didn't take long for people to show up in our neighborhood. So the first thing that we noticed was that there was a new this is so stupid, but there was a new like Wi-Fi. When you're going onto the Wi-Fi, you can see all the Wi-Fi that's in range, and
Yeah.
some things said
FBI surveillance van number 2.
yes, something something said not that exactly, but something said something like FBI or something. So I don't know what happened. But anyways, so after that, John decided that it was time to get authorities involved, right? So we go to the FBI, and I'm thinking for sure that I'm going to be arrested because obviously he knows, what I've been doing, right? He's probably got the evidence of it. And so that's what I think we're going there for. But he goes in there and we go in there together in the office together with the FBI agent, and John's kind of telling his story of, of his life and what's been happening since he'd been back to America, and why he, felt like he needed, some protection or just to alert them of what was going on. And then they asked me to leave, and I thought for sure that they were going to call me in and they're going to do all this questioning and it's going to be crazy. But nobody asked me anything, which was really, really strange, But I think they didn't believe him because no one investigated anything. No one. So he
Is it
did.
possible they thought he was paranoid?
It's possible. I don't know that he went in there like with a folder of,
Right.
evidence. I don't know what he could have showed them on the phone, but I just don't think that they believed him at all. So, so we just went on about our lives, and so while we were there was just a lot of strange things that were happening. Like nothing overly concerning, nothing overly like threatening,
Mhm.
just strange, activity. People coming and, sitting and parking, but not doing anything, kind of just watchers, if you will. And this was something I also experienced when I would go be with my kids, in California. Like I had people watching me there, not his people, because I knew the difference between his people watching me and other people watching me, because I didn't feel unsafe when his people were watching me. Um, so there was just this constant threat always. And so I get on the flight to go to California to see my kids, and John is there still at the hotel. And then he calls me like the next day or something, and he's like, "Listen, I've got people following me." And he said, I might go dark for a little bit, but I'll reach out to you when I can. And eventually he makes his way to me in California. I'm not sure exactly what all happened, but he was very concerned for his safety. So he makes his way to me in California. He says, "We have to leave. You can't stay here. Otherwise we'll be putting them in danger. So you need to come with me." Um, and I'm assuming that's because I was in danger as well. There's potential threat around me as well. So we left together, and we're driving now to I don't know why we went to Arizona. I don't know what exactly. Maybe he was trying to make his way back to Tennessee, so I don't know exactly the goal. Right, we were just driving away from California, but we are being followed on the highway. Okay, and we're trying to figure out how they're finding us. Like, how are these people finding us and following us this way? Because my phone battery was out of my phone. I'm super, I've been properly, the fear of God has been instilled in me, right?
Right.
Ever since Portland. So I wasn't dicking around, phone's off. I wasn't telling my family where I was. I wasn't checking in with a pimp. Like, none of that was happening during this time at all. Because now it's my life on the line, right? I mean, before it was just his, but still, if anything happened to him, well, who do you think they're going to come back to? Me,
Right.
obviously, right? So there was that sort of, making sure nothing happened to him for that. But now I'm in danger as well. So now I'm extra alert and on guard. And so John has his head of security, who he had for like 20 years working for him, a man named John Poole as well. And he came to meet us with also the girlfriend of the biker security that we had in Portland. So she comes as well. So he brings a rental car. They bring a rental car, and we're in John's pickup truck that he had bought, right? That he had had all along. Yes. And so we're outside of a Walmart in the parking lot because we're trying to figure out how they're following us, right? And it turns out there was a low jack on the truck. So none of us thought about that, right? Because there's just really extremely strange things happening with these people following us and how they were figuring out where we were with our phones not being on and the batteries when they were still making phones where you could take the battery out. So we all get into the rental car. So I'm in full burqa. John's up front. He's got the security woman, and we're riding in this rental car. Nobody knows that it's us. However, we're still in the same vicinity of where we left our truck, right? And so John's like, everything's cool. Like, we don't have to worry. And I'm like, no. I said, there's this car that's following us, right? And it's been following us, right? I said, if this vehicle turns when we turn, then I want you to understand that we're being followed still. And so we made a right turn. And sure enough, it was a white pickup truck. It turned with us, right? So John he's on it, right? And he's like, okay. So he speeds up, and then they speed up. So then he slows down, ridiculously slow, like maybe 20 miles an hour. And we're on this like 2-lane highway, right? He slows down so super slow, and they slow down. Normally you're going to go around someone driving that slow, right? But they didn't. So he speeds up. And he's doing like over 100 miles an hour now. And they're full on chasing us now at this point, right? And so at some point, maybe they got a call or an order to back off because they slowed down. And we kept going, into this town that we were coming up on. And we were almost out of gas. So we had to stop and get gas. And, I'm telling John, we need to hurry up and get out of here. We got to go. We got to go. He's like, no, I got this. We just need to chill and just cruise. And so that's what we did. And we were able to get out of town, from whatever that was. We made our way to New Mexico, and then we met up again with his head of security who was in the pickup truck. And we separated from the young lady, and we made our way to Tennessee, which is where John Poole lived. So we were now living with him on his property in the backwoods, Tennessee. And nobody's coming back there if they don't live back there. And if they are coming back there and are unwanted guests, well, they're going to be handled as such. So we felt extremely safe there, yeah. And we stayed there for a while. Again, still going out and John doing his keynote speeches, still doing his interviews. But that was our home base and extremely safe there. We go to Ireland. And in Ireland, that's where I told John what was happening. I told him about the pimp. I told him about the cartel representative. I told him about everything they asked me to do and all of the things. Completely came clean about all of that stuff. And so I was really, really scared because I didn't know what he was going to do. He didn't, obviously he was pissed,
I thought you were going to say, he said, oh, I know all that.
No, he didn't. Well, in so many words, he didn't say, yeah, well, I was watching or listening or anything, but, he was like, Jesus, you could have got me killed. You could have got yourself killed, but you could have got me killed. You know what I'm saying? And he's very upset because of the position that put him in with his security, right? Because now they're like, well, who is this broad that you can't just get rid of her, right? She's putting you in danger. She's making our job a lot more difficult. And I think him keeping me around gave him a perceived weakness that he didn't have, but the people just assumed that I was a weak link for him,
Right.
And so that caused a lot of difficulty, I believe, down the road, just with relationships, And so everything's out in the open. We come back to America and we are living our lives, right? And we move out of the head of security's place, and we're now moved to Lexington, Tennessee. We're still in Tennessee, but we have our own place. And the pimp shows up to Tennessee. Now, after all of this time, I hadn't been in contact with him during this time. So he shows up. And same situation, same sort of, okay, well, these things you need to do for us, right? Because, whatever. I think he was trying to just say, if I didn't do it, my kids will be in danger. And obviously he would be in danger, and I didn't care about that. But, he just was threatening, my family. And so I was very concerned about that. But I didn't tell John because now, because what am I supposed to say? Right? I just come clean. And it's like now but I still have this threat hanging over me because I don't know how serious this cartel threat is to me personally. Because I didn't take any money from them, right? It would have been one thing if they paid me directly, right? But I wasn't paid. The pimp was paid, and I was threatened. But I did know that when I went back to California to see my kids, I had people following me who were clearly cartel, Mexican people following me. So much so that my son noticed, that we were being followed one day when I was there. So, there was just this trust issue with John, that I just didn't trust him. Even though I had come clean about all of that stuff that had happened prior to, I just didn't trust him to protect me or even to protect my children, And so I didn't share with him this new threat that was happening, right? But life continues to go on. And then John runs for president. And which was a wacky time.
Right.
Yeah, it was.
That comes out of nowhere.
Sure. Yeah, it did really come out of nowhere. all along he's just been doing things to reinvent himself, right? Like we did the how to uninstall McAfee video, which went viral. It was pretty funny, actually. I don't know if you've seen it, but you should watch it.
I've heard it. I mean,
Yeah.
I haven't seen the video, but I know he made one.
Yeah, it's kind of awesome. And so he basically just took all of the news of what they said about him, how he's paranoid and he always had guns and he was probably a drug addict or whatever, and always with women. So we kind of did like a parody of how to uninstall.
Yeah, what was
McAfee?
what's this? Yeah, is there any more like how did that idea come about? Because that's a viral clip that's kind of mentioned in all these documentaries or whatever. It's got millions of views.
Yeah. So I don't know. John was just, I don't know who thought of it, but John was like, he just thought it was a good idea because there was just a lot of news, a lot of negative press about him, at the time. This is before him running for president, obviously. And so I think this was closer to after he was back in America. It's about a few months into that, maybe that first year when we did that video. And so I think he was wanting to just shift the narrative of what was being, said about him to just kind of lean into it, right? And make a parody of it, if you will. So that was kind of the idea behind that. So
it wasn't a serious run.
No, God, no.
Okay.
The presidential, no, that was very serious, actually. For him.
Okay.
But I think it was mostly him wanting to, because he couldn't be whacked on the campaign, right? You can't, that just...
People try.
But that helped a lot
Right.
with as far as, because he was on the campaign trail. So there was places that he needed to be, places that he was scheduled to be. And if he didn't show up,
Yeah. Well, there's a lot more.
Would ask questions.
There's a lot more, you're a lot higher profile
Yes.
if you're doing that.
More eyeballs.
Yeah. People are watching you all the time.
Yeah.
So it makes it a lot more difficult for these guys. Like, do we want to? Yeah. This guy's fucking. He's going to be here. He's going to be there. There's cameras following him all the time. Yeah, it's not good.
Yeah. So that was definitely, I think, a part of the plan, right? And this was also why he was doing these speeches and doing these news, interviews, because he wanted to keep his profile raised, to make it more difficult for anyone to just sort of snatch and grab him, So the presidential run, that was crazy. It was a fun time, though. It was a good time. It was a fun time, and but it was also, I don't know, it was also kind of dangerous as well, just because even though the profile was raised, there were still people following us. There were still people trying to slip him a drink or, trying to get him to a specific area. There was even an instance where he was served for a lawsuit or something. He gotten word that they were actually gonna try to serve him on the convention floor at the national convention for the Libertarian Party. But
for what was the lawsuit?
I believe it was related to his neighbor that was murdered. I think it was for that. And so we actually had to intervene in that. We kind of stayed out in the lobby area, just kind of watch. And they actually, one of the marshals found, I think, one of his security that was with us and said, okay, well, we need to see Mr. McAfee. Because I guess they didn't want to go inside. I don't know how that happened. Anyways, I know Jimmy brought this up, so this is something that I'm touching on. But I think the presidential run and the speeches that John gave is the best glimpse into who he was behind the mask of that public figure image, that sort of crazy, paranoid madman that he leaned into as well. He really did lean into that, and I think it was necessary because he didn't have the money that he once had. When he left Belize, when he went to Belize, first of all, he took whatever money he had in the banks that went with him. So the bulk of his wealth was there in Belize. So when he had to leave, that was all stolen from him. So when I met him, he literally only the clothes on his back was what he had. And so without that wealth, there were different ways then that he had to, creative ways he had to protect himself from this great threat that he had that would have been easy to do had he have had still his money. So I think leaning into that crazy drunk, I don't know if you know much about John, but he would do these mixology videos on Twitter where he's mixing these crazy alcoholic beverages. And so there was just this perception of himself that he was leaning into, that he was an alcoholic and that he was, on drugs and just living wild and loose,
Was he on drugs?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, he's just very calculated in the way that he had to maneuver publicly. We moved houses in Tennessee. We moved to a lake house. There's a lot of crazy things happening there. That's where Jimmy entered into the scene at the end of the presidential run. And I think it was about 2017, Jimmy came.
That's when he starts doing the cryptocurrency.
Yeah, this is about that time where John gets into crypto. And
so he's got to be making money again at that point.
Yeah, well, he was doing... he was the keynote speeches that he was doing. He was being paid for those, but obviously nothing like what he was, making
getting
with
paid
crypto.
30,000 or 50 or 80 or whatever it was. I don't know what it was, but getting paid that doesn't keep that's not enough to have 3 security officers, on staff and pay for all the things that it takes to be, I'm sure, John McAfee.
Yeah.
So,
and it took a lot. So yeah, we had live-in security, all ex-military that were living with us.
But the crypto stuff must have been lucrative.
It was fun. It was a fun time. I wasn't really so much involved in that just because I didn't want my hands in that, because I just felt like the people that were involved in that, the things that John was saying to me about some of the people involved in that, he was concerned with some of them. So I didn't want to be a part of that and become someone's scapegoat, right, for whatever nefarious activity they may or may not have been involved in. Yes. But the crypto time was it was a fun time because they were always working. They'd be huddled in the kitchen or in the living room, and they'd all be on their computers and, oh, look at this coin. You should check out this coin. This is when John had his coin of the day going. And then I think he had the coin of the week, and the projects that he was getting involved in were actually projects that he believed in. So it wasn't just about making money.
Right.
It wasn't just about pumping the price. That's what the coin of the day was for, right? Or the coin of the week, but also giving recognition to some projects that he thought might actually have a viable chance to do some good,
Right.
So it wasn't meant to just only pump bags, but that's what ended up happening. But the projects he was personally involved in as an advisor, these were projects that he believed were in some way aligned with his core values, which was privacy and freedom, financial freedom. This is what he wanted to bring to the market, if you will, right? Like he saw crypto as a way for everyone to be financially free. He saw it as a great leveler, right? Leveling the playing field, where there wouldn't be this disparity between, the wealthy and the not so much. And so during this time, Jimmy becomes CEO eventually. We still have other security that's working there. We have, live-in team members that are living there with us. There was actually an attempt on John's life. I want to say it was the summer of 2018. I'm surprised Jimmy didn't tell this story because he was actually the one that found him. So Jimmy had taken me to the airport. Now we were now in North Carolina. We were just on vacation in North Carolina. And Jimmy had taken me to the airport with his wife as well. His wife was there. She was visiting. So John was at the house with, I'm not sure if there was another security there, but there was a house full of people, some other people there. And so what Jimmy told me was when he got back to the house, he said the house was completely dark. All the lights were off. Nobody, he was calling out to people. Nobody was answering him. And, he said after about an hour or so, after not, seeing anyone or hearing anyone, he said he went to go check on John. And because he had already tried to check on him but didn't hear John respond, he decided to then go inside or open the door. And that's when he found him on the floor in his own vomit, kind of gasping for air, couldn't breathe. So they called an ambulance, rushed him to the hospital. They actually had to airlift him to another hospital. It was pretty serious. So Jimmy calls me to tell me what's going on. And so, but the problem was I couldn't fly out immediately. I had a court date with my kids because my dad was wanting me to get custody. And so I was trying to wait for the court date. And I figured, okay, Jimmy has this in hand. Jimmy was calling me and updating me on everything. I did want to be there, but I needed to take care of this with my kids. I didn't want them to think that I was choosing him over them, right? Even though it was a serious situation. So it was a difficult choice that I had to make. But anyways, once he was out of danger or out of, any imminent danger of being permanently, I guess, injured or what have you. I didn't know exactly what the situation
I don't
was.
understand. It sounds to me like he
I don't know.
drank too much or passed out and threw up. I mean, I'm not sure.
I don't know. Yeah, I'm not sure how serious at this time. I'm not sure yet how serious it is or what exactly happened. Nor did Jimmy tell me exactly what had happened. So anyways, I eventually leave California and I get back to where John is. I go to John in the hospital and they have him on a ventilator. And they're saying that if we take him off the ventilator, he could die because he's not getting enough oxygen, but the doctor just kept pressing this, like if he's going to die if you take him off the ventilator. I'm like, okay, well, but he's sitting up. He looks very alert to me. Like it doesn't, like he's writing things out and he's like demanding, take me off of this ventilator. I don't want to be on it anymore. And so, the doctor is really going back and forth with me about that. And I was like, okay, well, we all just watched him write this note saying that he wants to be removed from the ventilator or he wants it removed. So let's just do that, right? He's obviously of sound mind and body for him to have written this. So let's do that. So anyways, they take him off. And John says that what happened was someone gave him a drink and that was the last thing he remembered. And he woke up in the hospital. And so, so I don't know exactly still to this day what exactly happened. I just know what John said and that it was pretty serious. They ended up putting a PICC line in him. So whatever happened, it was very serious. And we get back to Tennessee. There was some other things, just a lot of threats of danger. Yeah. And so now we're back and we move now to North Carolina. Jimmy's employment ended with us. I'm not sure what was going on with Jimmy, but there was just this deterioration that was happening with him. He just seemed to be more wired, more stressed, more just something was going on with him, and that came to a head one night where he just completely went off the rails. His wife came upstairs and she's like, I'm concerned about him. He's got his gun and he's talking crazy. And so, John said, okay, everybody just, stay back, just leave him alone, and because obviously Jimmy with a gun, it could be a very dangerous situation. And so, I think he described it as some sort of psychotic or mental break or something that happened with him. But from the outside looking in, it was really scary, And so he ended up spending the night. I guess he was like buried in the sand somewhere,
Yeah, he went out in the swamp, right?
Yeah, he stayed. Yeah, and everybody was like super scared. We didn't know like what, because he's armed. You know what I'm saying? We don't know what's going on with him. And so John was like, when he comes back, no one talks to him except me. I want to talk to him. And so, John was just really concerned for Jimmy, and we ended up getting him to go to a facility where they would look after him because he was, I guess, maybe suicidal or something. His wife came. So we got him in there, and that's how the relationship with Jimmy ended, and then we found out some other things from other people that were working that Jimmy had been um, scaring everybody for quite some time because they just saw him kind of deteriorating in a way that we didn't get to see. So it was just something that happened that needed to happen. Whatever mental issues that he had, whatever break he had, that needed to be handled first. And so that's why we separated and the relationship ended. So after Jimmy, it wasn't long after that John had gotten word that there was a grand jury that was convened and there was an indictment coming down the line against him, myself, Jimmy, and other people.
For what?
At the time, I don't think John knew. I think he might have known if it was tax related. I just don't recall him sharing that with me at the time. And so John was like, okay, well, we're going to have to leave. We're going to have to leave before they're able to, come and arrest us. And so before all of this had happened, he had purchased a boat that he was refurbishing, getting it sea ready because it wasn't at all sea ready. That was the Freedom Boat. The name of it was The Great Mystery. And by the time he had gotten news about the indictment, the boat was just about ready to go. So we ended up leaving America January 2019, and we head to the Bahamas.
What are you thinking that you were being indicted? When they said, and you're being indicted, you were like, for what?
Right, exactly. That was exactly my reaction, I should say. Why? Like, what did I do?
What documents are you on? Like, did he open up multiple accounts in your name?
No, he never did that. But the homes were in my name. All of our homes were in my name, except for the last home that we purchased. Right. A couple cars.
That explains it.
My cars,
right. Well, there's what they consider to be, money related to tax evasion that was used to pay for assets placed in somebody else's name. So you're hiding assets for him, is what the way they're looking at it.
Okay.
Well, at the very least, in order for them to seize those assets, they need to indict you.
Right. Okay. Understood.
So they're not necessarily even thinking she's in on it.
Okay.
She's actively doing this, but we're going to want to grab those properties. So let's go ahead and indict her so she'll just sign them over.
Okay. See, my thing was that I thought they were just trying to, and as a way to get to him, right? To use me as a way to do that. Right?
That may be part
because
of
we
it.
actually didn't even have those like the homes had already sold.
Right.
So we didn't have those. I mean, the cars are not worth a lot. I mean, but it's still assets, I guess, that they would want to seize.
Right. Still, the more people are on the indictment, the more potential witnesses there are against the main person that you do want.
Right. Okay. Now, see, that's what I was thinking.
They don't mind ruining your life to get you in a position where you're willing to testify. They
don't mind doing that at all. Yeah. So this was why I decided to leave, with John. I didn't have to. But this was obviously, who are they going to grab up? The wife always goes to prison.
Right.
The girl always gets it. She always gets whacked in the end. So this was, my reasoning for going or what sort of pushed me over the edge for sure to go with him to the Bahamas. So we went to the Bahamas because there is no income tax there. So we could not be extradited from the Bahamas back to America. And so we were there maybe a month or so. And then John got word that they were going to try to arrest him for anything, just to get him into custody so he could be shipped back to America. And we ended up going into hiding for a few days while we were in the Bahamas. And John had installed security cameras on the boat. So we were able to tap into that. And we saw actually when they came on the boat to try to come and arrest him. And after that, we gassed up the boat, got food, and we left and went to Cuba. And Cuba was awesome, actually. Cuba was awesome. The Cuban people are such a beautiful people, such a beautiful people. They don't have much, but they are so happy and loving, and what they do have, they're willing to share. And also, it's like stepping back into the 50s because all of the cars that they
Mhm.
have there is so weird. Um, but we stayed there for a few months, I think, maybe a few weeks. I don't know. It doesn't really matter. But, anyways, we were there. And there was someone that came from the government. John and I weren't there, so we didn't see this person. But anyways, they came and said that his presence was requested to come to this location because someone needed to speak with him. So we go there. It looked like some old army barracks. I don't know what exactly it was. And there was a general that John actually spoke to, and he said, we're getting pressure from the U.S. to send you back to the US, but we don't want to do that. So instead, we're going to give you 72 hours to leave. And so that's what we did. 72 hours came and we left. And we couldn't go back to the Bahamas. So we decided to go to the Dominican Republic. And that took 4 days. 4 days. We ran out of water. We ran out of food. We had our dogs with us. By this time, we had 4 dogs, 2 German Shepherds, a Commodore, and Tequila still. And two security, and Robert King, who had been filming, who was with John in Belize and did some filming for him there. He was one of the people that was with John when they took the picture and said we're with McAfee suckers, that he was there with him as well. So he had filmed John's whole time on the run in Belize, and he was now with us when we left America. So he was filming that as well. And after 4 days, we get to the Dominican Republic. But when we get to the dock, they had moved all of the boats to like the back side of the port. I guess is that what it's called, the port? Anyways, to the port. And so the front side where they asked us to pull into was completely empty, and there were soldiers stationed on different areas, kind of surrounding our boat where they told us to park our boat. And they wouldn't allow us to get off the boat. They wouldn't allow us to talk to anyone. So we were just sitting on our boat, not knowing what was going on. Eventually, 2 people come and get on the boat, a man and a woman, and they tell us that we have to give up our phones, and they make us sit outside of the boat. Well, we had to put the dogs up in the captain's area, and then we had to stay outside on the back of the boat while they were in our boat, right? And they spent, I don't know, maybe a couple hours just in our boat doing what I don't know. We didn't know at the time, but John did have a large amount of cash on him. So I should go back to that. When we first left the Bahamas, John sent 2 of the gentlemen that were living with us in America back to the States to close out his bank account. So when they came back with $500,000 in cash. Okay. Now, he didn't keep all of that money on him in cash. I'm not sure what he did with the rest of it, but he had about $100,000 in cash with him. So when we went to Cuba, we had to declare this cash. Obviously, we had to declare it in the Bahamas as well, but we declared it in Cuba as well. Somewhere from there, I think they gotten word about the cash that we had, because that's the only thing that makes sense about why they refused to let us be on the boat while they were searching our boat. I mean, they completely ransacked our boat. They kept us 4 days in detention, right, in a jail, but they kept us in the cafeteria area for 4 days. No explanation, nothing. They told us nothing. And after the 4th day, I think they allowed us to go back on our boat to grab what we could, and then we were to leave again. They were supposed to put us on an airplane. So like I said, when we got on the boat, our boat was completely ransacked. I mean, everything was everywhere. And John said they actually asked him to show to show them where his money was. Right. So obviously that's what they were obviously looking for. And I think they were upset that they couldn't find it. So they were supposed to take us to an airport. They didn't take us to an airport. They took us to another facility where they had all of the prisoners in a barn. All of the men were in a barn, but the women were in their cells, because that's where I went. And they had this empty area that was clear where they put John, Robert King, and then there was two securities that we had with us from the Bahamas. And they made John give over the money, obviously. But he had them counted out, and he said, I want a receipt for this. I don't even know. Anyways, but he asked for a receipt. I actually have pictures of that. And I think they were still just trying to figure out how they could get a hold of this money, right? How they could, have us leave and then be able to keep our cash. But I
Right.
think John asking for a receipt kind of thwarted whatever they were thinking that they could do. So we spent the night there. Eventually, we make it to immigration, where they tell us that we are all being shipped back to our countries of origin. And John said, well, because he had dual citizenship of the US and the UK, he said, well, I want to go to the UK. I don't and you legally, you cannot force me to go back to the United States because I have another passport and I want to go here. So it became this whole thing. John got attorneys, was able to hire attorneys again to sort of bring his argument before the courts. And again, situation of needing time to file these motions. So
He had a heart
John,
attack.
no, not a heart attack this time. He faked a stroke this time. And
Okay.
so it was really funny because he came, they were counting the money to give him back the money in another office across from us. And so he came over and he said, listen, don't be worried. I'm just doing my thing. So I was like, okay, whatever. So he goes back to the room where they're going to count out the money. And then all of a sudden he falls over and he hits the floor, right? And so it's super funny because all of the people are like standing there like, really, sir? Like, get up. Like, we know what you're doing, right? And so no, like literally no one helped him. And when he came to, he pretended as though he didn't know anyone. He didn't know what was happening. Who are you people? Where am I? Where's my wife? What is going on? And like he's freaking out. He's actually a really good actor. And so they finally allowed me to go and talk to him. And I told them, I said, listen, they're making me leave. They're about to take me to the airport. Okay, I love you, but I gotta go. So now he's like, okay. So I'm now driven to the airport with everyone else, Robert King, and the two gentlemen from the Bahamas. And we're all being taken to the airport to be sent back to our countries of origin. And when we got there, they got a phone call and said, bring her back because he's in the hospital. So they take me back to the hospital. I see him. He's chilling. He's just like, oh yeah, everything's cool. Just waiting on word. And the attorneys show up and they're like all smiling, like, yeah, we got it. And he's like, okay, well, you can't like act like that. You have to be a little more incognito. So anyways, long story short, the gentleman of the immigration then said, okay, Mr. McAfee, where would you like to go? Right, because now this motion has been filed in court, and now I guess whatever he was trying to have happen was now not possible because of the legal maneuvers that were made. So they ended up purchasing us flights to go to the UK, and that's where we went. And we stayed there. John on the flight over, John booked us a hotel, and with Bitcoin, I wish I remembered what the name of the hotel was because it was really nice actually. Bitcoin that we got to use to check in there, and we stayed there. We got there on a Friday evening, so all of the government offices were closed. So this obviously gave us time to make our exit. So John decided that we would leave on Sunday before anyone could open up and see that we were there, because obviously the UK and the US have a very close relationship and they would definitely have shipped us back. So we made our way deeper into Europe. Won't go into the details of how we did that, but we made our way deeper into Europe, and eventually made our way to Spain.
Right.
And that's where we were kind of hanging out.
Detained?
No. We were living
Okay.
life. We were in hiding, living our lives free. Yeah, it was really nice. It was really a really nice time because nobody knew where we were. We were safe, but still able to go out in the world. Go and have lunch and dinner and do nice things. It was really nice. We bought scooters. We would scoot. So it was really fun. It was a really fun time. We were traveling. We did a European road trip We went to Italy and Germany. It's just a really good time. So fast forward to John has his 75th birthday, September 18th. It was a good birthday. He hated celebrating his birthday, but it was a good one. And he was planning on going to Turkey, from what I was told, going to Turkey to see a friend. And so, mind you, we had flown before, so there was not an issue. We knew there was no issue with John's passport, right? So whatever the U.S. wanted him for,
They hadn't filed
they
like a
hadn't
written
fully-
notice with
No.
Interpol.
no. So everything was good. And so, fast forward to October 4th, John is leaving for Turkey, and he gets arrested at the airport. But he is told that he is being detained because his passport was flagged as stolen. Okay. And so they keep him, I guess, in the holding facility at the airport. That's where he is there. And then all of a sudden, this red notice thing comes up, and now he's being held for tax related charges, right? And it took a little bit of time to get in contact with him after they, took him to the prison. I think about a week it took. And I don't know. I just, there was something up, when he left. He wasn't acting himself. He was on edge a little bit, when he left. And I'm not sure if it was because he knew something was happening or what, but there was just something going on. I remember I messaged him and I said, just let me know when you get, to your destination safely. So anyways, yeah, so he's arrested and he's now in jail. And the friends that we were with there in Spain hired an attorney for him. And, this attorney was trying to work on getting him on house arrest, right? So he could get out of jail. Obviously, they're not going to do that because he's John McAfee, right? He's absolutely the definition of flight risk.
Right.
So, but he did his best to legally maneuver around that. And John, once I was finally able to get in contact with him, he sounded good. He sounded in good spirits. He said that the people were kind to him. They were surprised that he was in that prison because he was just in, I guess, what we would call general population. Yeah, with all, like, he wasn't housed in some sort of cushiony area of the prison. He was with general population. So all of the criminals that were there, he was with them. He said he had one instance where someone tried to get in his face, but one of the other gentlemen stepped in between. So he had protection in there. I don't know if that was something that he arranged or if it's just people, looking after him because he was, older man. And, again, they were just surprised that he was in there, like, especially for what he was being charged with. They called him Papa America. That was his nickname. The guards, he had good relations with guards. At least this is what he's telling me.
Yeah.
Now, the situation could have been extremely different.
Well, I don't think they're going to put him into a position. They don't want to put him into a position where he's in harm's way. I mean, they have different levels of different levels of security. So they're probably not didn't put him out in with the axe murderers. Where were you staying?
I was still with the friends that we had been staying with.
Okay.
Yeah. So I didn't go and visit him because he didn't want me to. There was a concern that if I did, I would be followed from the prison, and then people know where we were staying at. And then also, he just said he didn't want to see me that way, and he didn't want me to see him that way. So I didn't go, but I did talk to him again. As I mentioned earlier, I talked to him every day, 3 times a day, early in the morning, afternoon, and then in the evening. 8-minute calls, 8 minutes, just not nearly enough time. But I would give him I would go through. He asked me to find like headlines of what's happening in the news, kind of keep him up to date of what was going on. And he would, dictate his tweets to me, and just to, so I could keep his voice out there, right? And just keep, again, just making it a little difficult for him to just be taken out, right? Because this is still the concern.
That's what his fear is.
Still
fear
the
is if
concern.
they get him back to the United States, that he'll be Epstein.
Yeah.
Not Epstein, but I think taken to a CIA black site and tortured.
This I was gonna wait to ask these, but it's probably a good time to ask now.
Yes.
Just for if you have any information or like stories behind some of these tweets. And some of these may have been tweeted by you or by him, but one is, I am content in here. I have friends. The food is good. All is well. Know that if I, off myself, a la Epstein, it will be no fault of mine. Was that something that you had to say for him?
No. So all of the tweets that you see after October of 2020 were all me. Those were all the tweets.
That one was,
but those were not tweets that I was.
Yeah. I'm saying that he
making up.
Yeah.
Right.
So-
Okay.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
what he meant. He meant these are.
You were doing that for him.
Yes, I was tweeting for him,
So
but
he's
he
telling
was
you, tweet
telling me what
this
to tweet.
verbatim.
So, and that was, do you know how far before October 15th was?
So he didn't, it was
When did he pass away?
2021, June 23rd, 2021.
Okay.
So he was in jail for 9 months, almost 9 months.
And then some of his other tweets, now these are earlier. He got the tattoo $ whacked. And the tweet is, getting my subtle messages from the U.S. government saying, in effect, we're coming for you, McAfee. We're going to off yourself. I got this tattoo just in case if I off myself, I didn't.
Right.
I was whacked.
Yeah.
Check
So
my
this
right arm.
this was him tweeting. So everything before October, that was him tweeting. Sometimes he had other people tweet for him as well, but that was one of his tweets. And what was going on then? I don't know. Not that I can recall. I don't recall feeling that there was a threat or anything.
Okay, that's fine. And these are just like kind of the most popular ones. And this is, I don't have the date on this one, but I've collected files on corruption in governments for the first time. I'll be naming specifics. I'll begin with the corrupt CIA agent and 2 Bahamian officials. Coming today, if I'm arrested or disappear, 31 plus terabytes of incriminating data will be released to the press. Is there any?
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah, I definitely 100% believe that the information he said he had for sure. And he was absolutely going to dox those people that you just mentioned in the tweet, but he got a phone call from someone who advised him that would be not a good course of action. So he backed off from that. And that was before, I think that was around the time where when I had mentioned earlier that he had said he'd gotten word that they were going to just try to arrest him. I think that tweet came around that same time.
What was John's thoughts on Epstein? Like, as far as how things ended for him? Because I see, like, obviously, I think it's very similar cases where it's a high profile person who apparently has off themselves. And it seems that, or people believe that they have incriminating evidence or things against people of higher power, or what was his whole thoughts on that situation? And do you think there's similarities, or
especially you would think that they're incarcerated, surrounded by cameras and guards. You'd think this is an extremely safe place that they would be.
No, not at all. So John was very vocal about what he thought happened. And he spoke about the cameras, how they were malfunctioning or turned, so that it didn't capture, how the guards were asked to go home or they went home early, something happening. But the biggest thing that he spoke about was the fact that Epstein had a cellmate who was moved. I believe it was either the day before he, offed himself allegedly, or maybe hours before. And John also tweeted about the gentleman that they said was moved into the cell, which is someone by the name of Nicholas Tartaglione, I believe is the name. Anyways, a interesting gentleman and his photograph. So John was, I don't think I heard anyone talk about this, but John tweeted about that. That was something that he tweeted out about as well, like before he was arrested. So I don't know, again, if any of these things had to do with uh maybe the information that he might have collected or something like that, because I don't know how he was able to get all of that information about this gentleman being moved into his cell. And then also even the autopsy report that said his neck was broken in several places, Jeffrey
Right.
Epstein's neck. Right, which well, I guess you could break your neck and if you're trying to, harm yourself, but not in the way that he, right? Like it doesn't make sense that
Right.
his
Well, that's
neck
what
would be broken, right?
that's what like these independent um, uh, people that have looked over. They're saying that the bones were broken in the wrong
Yeah.
spot or weren't able to be broken. It would, there was there's all kinds of speculation, and then the cameras just like malfunctioned. I don't know. I would know that the guards fell asleep. Like I think one or two of the guards
Okay.
had said they fell asleep.
Yeah.
Like you fell asleep at the correct time, at the perfect time,
Right.
and the
Yeah.
and the camera stopped working.
Yeah.
But-
So I think he believed, well, I'm not sure if he believed he faked his death or whatever, but he definitely believed he was murdered.
Okay.
Like he did not believe that he killed himself, not at
Right.
all. Just obviously with the body of evidence, So that was kind of his thoughts on that, and I think that's why he tweeted or asked me to tweet what I did relating to his own situation, being in jail. So
And then I just have one more tweet to read, and this
Yeah.
is just kind of maybe to add context. This is from 2018. He tweeted the quote unquote presidential alerts. They're capable of accessing the E911 chips in your phones, giving them full access to your location, microphone, camera, and every function of your phone. This is not a rant. This is for me. This is still one of the leading crypto or cybersecurity experts. Wake up, people. So what is he's kind of what throughout your time together, he's kind of whistleblowing
Yes.
about privacy and
absolutely, privacy was a major focus for John, for obvious reasons, because we were in constant danger, and the cell phones were obviously the easiest way for us to be tracked. John absolutely believed that they are spy devices, that you're carrying with you a spy device, where it's listening to you.
They voluntarily got you to
Yeah.
got you to purchase
Yes.
something that allows them to track you and,
Yes.
and listen in on your conversations.
And so I think that we can see this. I think even the normal regular person can see this. That there's an insecurity in this world that should not be, and this was something that John was vocal about. Privacy and using the technology in a way that can bring back privacy, and that's what he was hoping. Crypto could do that as well, which is why he promoted privacy coins like Monero. That was a big one that he talked about because it was completely private. No one would know how much you had or where it was going or who was giving it to you. It could be completely private, whereas all of the others is not so.
They're
It's sort
trackable.
of built
They're being
in.
tracked.
Yeah, it's built in that way. The lack of privacy is built in. It's almost intentional. That and I think for John, the fact that he spoke about this so much is that he just saw that inherently we just don't look at the other side of things. Like we see the things that we want to create, like the cell phone. It's a great thing that we created, right? But at the same time, though, we don't think about, okay, who can manipulate this technology for nefarious purposes?
Mhm.
And we don't build, as we're building these things, we don't build in those protections from the ground up when we very easily could do that. One of the things that John talked about a lot was having a ghost phone is what he called it, a phone in which you had hard switches for the power, for the Wi-Fi, for the Bluetooth, for your location. So that way you can't be tracked if you wanted to. And instead of it being software, it'd be a hard switch and you turn it off. And there's actually a company, I believe in Germany, who's coming out with the phone that was similar to what John was talking about. I think a lot of the things that John talked about are still relevant today. And that's what's super important to me, not just telling the story of how he died, because people need to know that as well, but also everything that he spoke about is so relevant today. Now that's happening. When you think about, I think I mentioned to Colby, the situation that happened in Iran, where Israel was able to strike and take out the leadership, over there, because they were able to get all of those people into a room. That took just a little bit of social engineering, and obviously, I'm sure, tracking phones and all of that, right? But it's kind of, for me, it's just, I just see all of these things and how they're related to the things that John would talk about, and how important it is to have our privacy, how important it is to just be able to live a normal life, right?
Mm-hmm.
You need to have some privacy. Like, I don't know you. You're a nice man, allegedly. You seem that way anyways. But I wouldn't come in here sharing my deepest, darkest secrets with you, or giving you my, my bank account information or my passwords, right? I just wouldn't do that. And yet we carry these devices around with us, and we're trusting it to keep our secrets, and it's just not built that way.
Right. My fear of crypto is kind of like the when the Canadian truck drivers didn't want to take the COVID vaccine.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying?
Right.
And so what they do, they said, "Oh, okay, we'll shut down all your bank accounts." That to me was like, okay, well that's crypto, and that's so if. I mean, it's not crypto, but I'm saying this is the same thing. If suddenly we're all using digitized money that is controlled by the government, then suddenly they say, "Oh, by the way, you can only spend so much money on, on groceries, or you can only do this." They start having the ability to limit what you can spend your money on, and then if you're not behaving correctly, well, then guess what? You can't buy gasoline anymore. You can't. We're just going to shut all your crypto down. Something along those lines. It depending on the type of crypto it is and who has control of it. I understand a lot of people think, you're thinking, freedom.
Yeah.
A lot of people think freedom. I think no, they're tracking all of your money, and that bothers me. And if there was a way to unregulate it, then you know what I'm saying? Then I'd be okay with it, as long as you just can't shut it down.
Right.
So
well, I think to your point about the Canadian truck drivers, they prove that they can shut it down. Now, yes, it's in Canada, and that's not even crypto. That was just a regular bank account.
Right.
Right. And so, and obviously it's Canada, so maybe that can't happen here in the States, but it will definitely happen here in the States. We just haven't had anyone pull the trigger on it yet. As it relates to crypto, though, yes, definitely. With centralized exchanges, this can definitely happen for sure. And this was a thing that John spoke about a lot, having decentralized exchanges, so that there's not someone that the government can come to with a warrant or say, hey, shut this down because I said so, right? And if we're using decentralized exchanges, if we're using privacy coins, then they can't do that. It makes it a lot more difficult. And so crypto can be, it is very invasive. It is there, Bitcoin is very wide open. If you send Bitcoin to someone, they can forever look in your wallet and see how much Bitcoin you have, right? Like, so it's there is no privacy as far as that. So there are ways to protect yourself as you transact, with crypto. And so this is the idea behind the AIntivirus project that I've become involved with. We are rolling out some of the privacy ideas that John was speaking about, having a VPN, having encrypted email service. Also, we have a product where you can purchase gift cards with our token. There's also a token connected to it. So you can purchase gift cards with our token. So this allows you to transact privately as well. Just adds another layer of privacy. We have a Solana mixer as well. So you can mix your Anti and your Solana This just rolled out. We just rolled that out last month. And so there are ways definitely that you can.
What's the name of the service?
It's called AIntivirus.
That's it.
Yes,
Just AIntivirus.
AIntivirus.
So is it like antivirus, like .com?
No.
Like, is that where you go?
Well, the website is AIntivirus.ai.
.ai?
And that's where you can go to find out. And it's spelled AInti virus, virus. And so it's just a play on the antivirus, but it's AIntivirus because we also have an AI, John McAfee AI, that's making podcasts. It's really cool.
Making podcasts?
Yeah.
What are the podcasts about?
Any
variety
different,
of stuff?
Just a variety of subjects. It's our hope that one day we will be able to have guests on with the AI.
Is it like an AI image of?
Yes.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
What do they call those when they make them? And is it like it's a clone or a copy, or I don't know, a digital copy of you?
Yeah, so it's really, I don't know, it's really cool.
Yeah.
I really like the idea of it. So I'm going to be the first guest once we get it there. I think the concern that the team has is that if they sort of remove the training wheels or the security, or not security features, but what I would like to see happen is to just let the AI go free, right? And whatever it's going to say, it's going to say, right? Because that's kind of the attraction of John McAfee. Like, you never knew what he was going to say or what you were going to get from him. And I think the AI should mimic that for sure. And I think once we get it there, I would be the first to be interviewed by the AI.
Is this a bunch of guys in a garage, or is this like a big corporation that
well, no, it's not a corporation.
Is it like it's not a start. Is it a startup?
Yeah, it's like it's a grassroots team of people that just completely believe in John's message.
Yeah.
You know,
nothing wrong with a bunch of guys in a garage. You know, like that's how Apple started. So I'm not knocking it. I'm just saying, I'm wondering, is it like Microsoft came in and said, we're gonna put up here's a team and we're gonna run with this, or it's a bunch of guys that said this is what we should do. Yeah,
no, just a bunch of guys who want to honor the legacy of John McAfee and who understand that what he believed in, what he preached, if you will, about, is very much relevant today. Very much relevant today, and will become more relevant as crypto is introduced more mainstream. You know, because it is coming CBDC. So that's going to come, a crypto that is run and controlled by a government. And I think you're seeing the race to that right now between, Did
Trump sign that bill? Because it passed. You know what I'm talking about?
The big, beautiful bill?
Yeah, but I believe it's within.
I mean, yeah, there's a bunch of stuff in
within it.
The Genius Act you're talking about.
Was that separate, or was that just a portion of that bill, or is that a separate bill? I don't know.
I don't know either. I don't know
Pete
either.
Would know.
Yeah.
Pete would know. But Pete is saying that it wasn't, it was something passed that had to do with crypto, and something that made it more stable, that would stabilize crypto, would allow you to invest in crypto, including allow you to invest your retirement fund in crypto. Like, there were certain things you couldn't do, and that this was stabilizing, and he was saying that Trump was definitely going to sign it. So I kind of assumed it was attached to the big, beautiful bill that had just passed. But I could be wrong. Yeah. I'm wrong all the time. But either way, it's definitely, like, let's face it, like, Trump loves crypto, and there's 3.5 more years.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So it's going to be implemented in some way. And then there are people that are saying, hey, they should place us on kind of like the gold standard and place us connected to crypto, which terrifies me. But then everybody else is saying, no, that you don't understand. It will stabilize the dollar. I have no idea. No idea how
I have no
works.
idea either. But I do. I think your concern is valid. That yes, once we get a government issued crypto, definitely we'll have to be concerned about it coming down the pike. That I don't like what you tweeted about, and so we're going to cut off your money right until you step in line, right? And that's definitely coming down the pike for sure.
You know, one of the things that terrifies me is that, like, I keep thinking to myself, like, I don't really know what's going to happen with crypto. I don't really know what's going to happen with AI. I don't really know what's going to happen with these robots. But the people that probably do know are buying up land on islands that are self-sufficient and building bunkers.
Yeah.
and shrugging it off when people ask him about it. They're like, oh, that's nothing. That's just like a storage unit. It doesn't mean anything. I don't know.
Yeah.
I feel like if Mark Zuckerberg is building a self-sustaining complex on an island that you can't really get to.
Yeah.
I feel like maybe he knows something.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Definitely.
Maybe Elon Musk isn't really worried about humanity. He's just thinking, you know what? Listen, the world's going to go to shit. I'm going to build a place on Mars. Maybe that's what, I like to think he's thinking, no, we need a second home for humanity. Or maybe it's maybe it is Dr. Evil. Maybe he's Zuckerberg's got his island. Fuck it. I'm going for a planet.
Right.
I don't know.
There's definitely something's afoot.
Yeah. What's Bezos doing?
Right?
Listen, if Bezos and Bill Gates have their own bunkers somewhere, which they probably do, I mean, you got to know.
Yeah.
You got to know things. There's some shit coming down. So
for sure.
But let's hope that everything's great in 5-10 years and not
or just make sure that you're prepared, right? I think everybody should be invested in crypto.
Pay my bills.
Prepared.
I'm not buying a bunker.
Well, you don't need a bunker, but definitely
I need some bows and arrows. Government won't even let me have a gun. I can't even have a gun.
Oh yeah, you're a felon.
I'm fucking harmless.
Sorry.
You kick my door in, I'm going to use what? Harsh language? But supposedly there's now an avenue where they're allowing you to get your gun rights back federally.
Really?
Supposedly. But I mean, I always think when I hear things like that, I'm excluded. Okay. I always think I'm excluded.
Why?
Well, because I owe restitution,
Okay.
And you could be making payments, but I'm never paying off $6 million.
Right.
All the planets would have to align.
Right.
Cats and dogs would have to start getting along. And this is not going to happen. And so I think to myself, that it's like being able to vote. Oh, you're a felon, you can vote. No. Yeah. No. I have to be able to pay off my restitution. It's $6 million. I will never be able to vote. And there's just certain things. Oh, you're a felon. If you're a felon, you're allowed to get your gun rights back. No, I'm assuming they're going to connect it to, because it's typically those types of things are once you've completed all of your requirements, and then you say, "Oh, I'm off probation." Yeah, but don't you owe
something? Well, why don't you find out?
Because they just announced it 2 days ago. Pam
Bondi. Yeah,
I want to say Bundy. Pam Bondi.
Yeah,
they just announced that she had that. What it was, and I saw a couple TikToks about it, and I just didn't look into it because my attention span is about the length of it. A short TikTok at that. So I'll ask somebody else to look. I'll ask my wife, like, can you read into this? And she'll be like, God, you're lazy. So anyway, so the whole system that's being devised or created that you're working on is set up in order to try and keep you anonymous.
Yes,
to help allow you to privacy. Not be tracked.
Yes, yeah. At least because honestly, no one who if I'm sending you crypto, you shouldn't then be able to have free access into my wallet to see how much I have, where it's going, who's sending me. That's just a ridiculous notion. And so these privacy products that we are bringing to market are going to help the individual bring some cloak and dagger, if you will, to their transacting as it relates to crypto. Yeah, and so that's what the hope is.
Well, it's just funny that the government's constantly trying to enact these laws and rules that allow them to just track everything. Everything. You open a corporation now. Oh, well, I think that it's actually that I think Trump got rid of this rule, but under Biden, they passed something where they said, hey, if you have any ownership in a corporation, you have to notify us. Well, that's the whole purpose of me opening a corporation, because it's an independent entity from me. If that's the case, I might as well buy these properties or do whatever in my name. The point is to buy something that you're not connected to create a business or an entity that you can sell, that can live on its own. You can, for whatever reason, it's like all of these things is like, well, why do you need to know that? If the corporation isn't paying its taxes, then you go after the corporation.
Not the individual.
Why do you need to know? To me, it's like, no, we need to be able to go after you. It's, we need to hire more more IRS agents.
Yeah.
Like, for what? Well, we need to give them guns. Why? Like, what's going on?
It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. We have to literally lay ourselves bare before our government.
Right.
But when we ask for the same,
which has been proven over and over again to not be trustworthy.
Right. Exactly.
So, I mean, you can't trust them to be transparent, even though they preach transparency every time.
Yeah.
Every time a new president or somebody comes in and starts pulling back the layers.
Yeah.
Even Trump, which I would have thought, hey, this is most likely your last term, regardless of your argument. That most likely is your last term. Like, he's just going to do insane, like just do stuff that people wouldn't do because they're afraid it's. But even certain things he's holding back on, holding back here. It's like initially it was, just executive order, like we're just going to tear the house down. We're burning the whole place down. And then suddenly it's like, well, wait a minute now. Maybe that's too much. Maybe, well, why?
Yeah.
Why are you holding back on this or holding back on that? Or who stepped forward and said, hey, man, come on, that's going to destroy my business if you pass that law, or like, I don't know. It just worries me. It's just everybody that gets in there, it kind of worries me. And I mean, and I'm not saying anything negative against, Trump or the Republicans, or the Democrats. It's just it always seems like they're not always. It just bothers me. These people get into power and then that they don't have always have the best interest of the U.S.
of the people that they're representing.
Right.
Yeah.
It puts you in power. I voted you in power to do these things.
Right. And none of those things are happening.
Right.
And then we
Some
also
of them are
have
happening.
Well,
but
not enough to make a difference.
Right. Well, I don't know. I mean, I guess it depends on if you're directly related. I just think here's what bothers me. I don't understand why you need so much control over my life and why you have to tell me what to do and what not to do and what I can know and what I can't know. For national security, I understand that.
Right.
Like, these people are like, oh, we shouldn't have a government. We shouldn't do. Okay, well, don't be foolish, bro. Like, if we eliminated soldiers and the police, it would be straight anarchy. If you got rid of the military, we should all, open borders and stop it.
Yeah.
They will come in here and just take everything you have. Like, some people are just foolish. And in some instances, you have to elect officials that know the big picture and will make decisions that are in your best interest, that you can't vote on individually. Does that make sense? Because they have the full picture that you can't have.
Right.
So you wouldn't let a child make their own decisions, right?
Right.
So, you and I will never know the full picture on some things, but those decisions are few and far in between.
Right.
Like that's national security type stuff. That has nothing to do with you looking in my bank account.
No, nothing at all.
Yeah, or knowing where I'm spending my money, or any of those things, or where I'm investing, or I don't like it.
No, I'm not a fan of big government. The less, the better.
I haven't been doing anything wrong.
Right.
I just don't think you need to. It's any of your business.
It's not. It's really
my
not.
TV's staring, watching
It
me. Even though I
is.
keep telling myself, no, there's no camera in the TV, But then I think, or is there? Just like, how many times have you never talked about turkeys? You never talk about turkeys. Right. I never talk about turkeys. I never bring up turkeys. And then one day,
all of a sudden,
Jess says, "Oh my gosh, I saw this funny video about a turkey, or I saw these 3 turkeys. Did you know I went to Ybor City and we were eating, and there were turkeys like walking around, these chickens walking around. This crazy." And I'm like, "Oh, that is crazy." And fucking 2 hours later, I open up Instagram and I'm getting videos of turkeys to music with sunglasses on, and they're doing this to the music, and I'm like, that's weird.
Well, what about the time we were here and you were talking and Matt said, I need to film 2 ads today. Just said it verbally. And then he went to text somebody and he's like, hold on, and then it auto-populated your text.
Oh,
It
wow.
started auto-populating.
I need to film 2 ads.
Right.
Yeah.
When is that
Yeah.
normal? When is that a natural thing that people say in general on text?
Right.
Never.
Yeah.
I mean, it happens all the time, and it's creepy. And they're like, "Oh no, it's only for the purpose of this. That information doesn't go any farther than. Come on, cut it out.
That's nonsense,
not true."
right? Of course, it's not true. But it just lets you know how much it's spying on you,
Yeah.
right? And then when you think about the things that you maybe are saying that you don't want anyone to know,
Right.
You know, maybe you're with your wife and it's, husband and wife time.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe that's not, ideal if your phone is picking all that up, right? I mean, it's just when you think about the implications of it, it is scary. Yeah.
Yeah, I was talking to a guy yesterday. His name is Mark Savant, and he specializes in AI and the implementation of AI and marketing with people, companies with AI, and all kind. He does all kinds of stuff with AI. We've had him on here before.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we were talking, and I was telling him about, basically talking about using AI, Google came out. There's really only 3 or 4 major companies that have come out that are allowing you to subscribe, where you use prompts.
Okay.
To, this,
Right.
Hey, I want a guy who's 6'2" who's in prison walking down a hallway. You give him the
Right.
prompt and it generates this little, and typically you get about 6 to 8 seconds is what it will generate.
Right.
It won't do a whole thing. And what's so funny is you only need that for the shorts. You only need that.
Yeah.
So it'll cut up multiple different things that are happening, and then when they piece it together, you're like, oh my gosh, it's a whole movie. Well, they're only 6-second scenes, 6 or 8 seconds. People are like, oh, it'll do a whole 3 minutes or 7 minutes. No, look at it again. It's only a little tiny. But so I was talking to him about doing that because Colby and I have this idea for a second channel where we do kind of premiere stuff.
Okay.
And I was talking to him about B-roll and this and how it works. And he was talking about how fast it's happening and how fast it's being implemented. And as we were talking, I was talking about how jobs are being replaced.
Right.
Tons of jobs are being replaced. And everybody seems to think, oh yeah, they're using AI for this and AI for that. And the companies are excited.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, maybe people are excited. People are kind of think it's cool about the robots. But I just think in 5 years from now, I was watching something the other day where they were talking about the jobs that are safe are jobs in the trades. And the only reason those jobs are safe is because a robot's right now, they're not ambidextrous enough. And I think that's the right word. I could be wrong. But you can see them, pick up the can and do that, right? But they're not drywalling your house.
Right.
You know, they're not going to do they can't walk in and do plumbing.
Right.
They can't, those types of things they're not going to be doing for a while.
Yeah.
But they are at some point. And so 5 years from now, when they're doing that, and there are robots everywhere. And Elon Musk talks about it. It always sounds ridiculous when he's like, oh, I believe there'll be, 400 million robots. You're like, get the fuck out of here. What are you talking about? Within the next 5 years, you're like, get that's not going to happen.
No.
But it's possible. Something along that, maybe not to that extent, but, and I don't know what the number was he said, but the point is that that's going to be devastating. And then I have people say, oh, well, it won't take a job like yours, but people won't have money.
Right.
My job won't matter at all.
Yeah.
It'll wipe it out. And then you think the government's not going to be scared because they're going to be desperate for money?
Of course.
And it's the future is so. I watched a thing where they were saying this is like the Industrial Revolution, only this is nothing. This has got the Industrial Revolution is like a hiccup. This is like everybody immediately doesn't have a job. What do you do?
It's gonna be wild.
It could be, horrific. And what do you do for money? What does money become when nobody has a job and nobody's getting paid and people are on the streets? Or do they stop you being on the streets? And then it's okay, well, oh, no, you can't evict anybody. Okay, well, what happens? How am I supposed to pay my mortgage when I can't? No matter what, somebody is losing huge. And the government's desperate for money to try and keep things afloat. How do they do that? It's a terrifying time.
Taxes.
Yeah, but taxes. How do you? Where do you get taxes from when nobody has a job?
Yeah.
How do I tax you if you say, oh well, taxes? Well, how do I collect taxes when the tax base shrinks to almost nothing?
Yeah.
I mean, you think to talk about the haves and the have-nots.
It's wild.
Yeah,
it's wild to think about it where things are headed.
And what's funny is that these people are building these bunkers.
Yeah.
And the people with money are like, oh, it's going to be great. It's going to revolutionize. Like, they don't seem typically business owners have a long-term view of the economy. And it doesn't seem like they're thinking that way at all now.
No.
Like the moment you remove the middle class and replace them with robots that are under the control of the elites, suddenly you have those middle class become poor, and now you've got 3% of society that is owning 95% of the wealth,
right?
And these people are hungry, and they'll just come. They'll come and execute the elites.
Yeah,
like that. Like I mean, I guess maybe at that point you hope you're on your own planet, or maybe you're on that island with your own private security. Like, I don't know what you're thinking, because at some point those people will say, hey, these guys have everything and we have nothing. And that's when you end up having some kind of a communist revolution.
Yeah. And maybe that's what the bunkers are for.
Maybe, but I don't think it ends well.
No.
Either way, I don't think it ends well for bunker or not. I think eventually people get in there.
Yeah.
With enough time and pressure, I'm going to get through that door. I'm going to have a little chit chat with old Mark. A little talk with a bad idea.
Right.
So.
Yeah, it's definitely.
But if they got your crypto, if they got your stuff, then at least their crypto safe.
Well, yeah, we'll see. We'll see I mean, I do believe that the dollar is gonna. I just believe the dollar is gonna crash. And I think crypto will become the standard. And how that plays out, I don't know. And it will be scary times for sure, and uncertain times for sure. But I do definitely think that's the next move. Right, because we're already pretty much a cashless society, right? I think I've paid cash a few times, and people look at me like I'm handing them the Ebola virus. They're like, "What is this foreign thing?" It's weird.
Have you ever gone in? We went to New Orleans, and there was an area where you could go sit. As we were walking in to go sit, they said, this is cash only. And I was thinking to myself, they have to remind you, because nobody has cash.
Right.
And they're afraid you're going to order and everything, and then be like, oh, I have my phone, or I have a credit. Yeah. But I remember thinking to myself, that they have to make sure because nobody's got cash.
Nope.
I almost never have cash. I only have cash when I go on vacation.
Yeah.
Because my fear is something's going to happen, and what I need to have a couple $100.
So I'm also working on, I just started this company. It's called Janice McAfee SEO. So it's just SEO work, which is search engine optimization. And it's something I got into when I was in Spain, waiting for John's body to be released. And I like it because I feel like it's helping me to sort of take back the narrative of mine and John's story, right? Like, there's a certain narrative that has been told as it relates to John's story. And I feel like this SEO work is going to help me to recapture my story, and tell it in the way that it should be told, and so also just doing consulting work as it relates to SEO work. So that's kind of super exciting.
So can we jump back to when you found out, when you got the phone call or were notified that John had passed away?
Yes.
How does that happen?
So okay, I'll just give, before I get there, let me just give you a little idea of what was happening. So we hired his friends hired an attorney, Spanish attorney for him. And then we had to get 2 American attorneys because there were 2 cases now being brought against him. The one that was tax related, and then there was another one that the SEC brought. And I believe that the SEC just brought that as a way to make sure that if this tax thing doesn't go the way we want it to go, he has this other thing. So they won't consider releasing him, right? Just to make sure that they've got him. So we had an attorney representing, two separate attorneys representing either case. And then we hired an additional Spanish attorney who was specialized in extraditions and who had actually, had some cases where the U.S. were involved. So he had a more focused expertise in that. And then we had another attorney in the UK because John had dual citizenship. So we were trying to see what we could do as it relates to that. So leading up to the day, John had a court date where they were going to make their ruling on the extradition. And so the plan, I won't necessarily say the plan, but we all knew that the extradition was going to be granted. Right. That's just what was going to happen.
Yeah.
And then obviously the next steps would be to fight the extradition, right? To appeal and so forth. So when it came for him to go to court, none of us believed that he would be extradited that day or the next day or week or month or year, right? It would take time for that to happen, right? So there was no loss of hope or just suddenly, oh my God, they're going to extradite me. John knew that there was a plan in place, right, of what the next steps were going to be and how the attorneys were going to move forward with that. So, so I spoke to him early in the morning that day, and before he went to court, so he called me earlier than normal because he wanted to talk to me before he went to court, and he sounded like himself, but he sounded unsure, I guess would be a good way to describe it. Just kind of tense, because you don't know what's going to happen. And then he called me again after he went to court, and he was disappointed with the decision, but again, it was not a surprise to any of us, to him at all. And he asked, when was his attorney going to come and see him? So I explained to him, I spoke with the attorney. He's going to come and see you. He was going to come and see him later that week. And, that the plan is to appeal and all of the things. So we talked about that. And then he said that, he said, I love you, and I'll call you later. So, and later would have been like, about 5 or 6 p.m. And so I'm going through my day. I don't know what I was doing, listening to music or maybe collecting headlines because I still have them, actually, because I would write out the headline and just... Anyway, so I still have those. And I was on Twitter and I got a notification of a DM, and it was all capitals. It said, OMG, tell me this isn't true. And so I'm not sure why, but I just immediately thought of John, and I immediately went to Google and I Googled his name. And that's how I found out that he had died.
And so it was up within...
It was up immediately.
Okay. So it wasn't even like a day.
No. Which is strange because not even his attorney got a phone call.
Right.
Right. They had my phone number. John listed me as his wife in the paperwork. We had divorced in America, so we were divorced at the time, on paper anyways. But still, he listed me as his wife on his prison intake paperwork, so they had my phone number, the same phone number John was calling. They didn't call me either.
But they called the newspaper.
But it went straight to the news. So that's how I found out.
When did the authorities when did they contact you to say?
They didn't.
Nobody ever called to say, hey,
no,
this is what's going on?
No, the attorney, I'm not even sure if the attorney got a phone call from them. I think once the news broke,
you probably
reached out to them, yeah. But I never got a phone call from anyone. I kind of toggled between, disbelief and like devastation. I still do. Just because, just playing devil's advocate here a little bit, obviously he'd been in there for 9 months, and, it could have been a lot worse than what he told me. I have no idea what he actually went through in there. It could have been terrible, you know? He had lost a lot of weight, but honestly, he was a little fat.
Right.
He's, very slender anyways, normally, but he had gained some weight, stress, whatever, life. And so I think that was just the weight that he lost,
Yeah, well, you don't have a refrigerator with food in it. You're
right. So you're going to lose weight. Yeah.
It's easy to lose weight, just natural. If you just eat what they're giving you, which is probably about a 2,000 calorie a day diet, you're going to lose weight.
Yeah.
The problem is that most people in the U.S., we overeat every meal and we snack.
Yes. And we don't exercise.
Right. But that's all there is to do in there is kind of walk around, your limit on your calories. You're going to lose weight naturally. That doesn't necessarily mean it's stress.
No. Yeah.
And it doesn't sound, like you said, it doesn't sound like because this is what I had thought happened, was that I thought that that the court had said he's going to be extradited, and then he was found.
No. So they were just granting the extradition.
Right. Had they even granted it?
That was the decision that they had came.
Okay, so they did come to
that decision. Yeah.
Right. But even then, they're not coming. It's not like guys are stored in the cells.
No.
It's now there's a whole process to get to that point, and then it's where he's getting extradited to. Is it the United States? Can he go back to the UK?
United States. They were sending him back to the US.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
To answer for the charges. Yeah.
Okay. Either way, I don't see. Well, I guess his fear wasn't going to prison in the United States. His fear was them getting him into a position where they had control over him, him having an accident, something along those lines. Torturing
him. That's what he was worried about. That was a great concern for him. I'm not sure what happened with him in Belize, but he said it was never going to happen to him again. So, so that was the concern. Yes, that they would get him and torture him for whatever to try to get the information that he had. It must have been some pretty damning information, for that level of hunting. That's the best way I can describe it. It was a constant hunt from the time that I met him, that they were just after him always. And so it must have been some pretty, like I said, some pretty damning information. So, it was a rough day anyways. It was a rough couple of days. And so, I think after, I'm sorry, I'm getting back to the day when he found the news. So, I think it was later at the end of the week, I was able to go to the prison and get his belongings. And the head of the guards, he was in there. There was a woman in there. I don't remember her position, but the gentleman said that, John was a really nice man. He really liked him. He never caused any trouble. He was always smiling and, trying to, like telling jokes and things. One of the jokes was, like during COVID. During COVID, John took my underwear. He would wear my underwear, thong underwear as a mask. That was his. So he would go, it's so funny. We'd be at a restaurant. He'd pull it out of his pocket and he'd do like this and shake it out just to make sure everyone saw that it was underwear, and then he'd put it on his face. So he did that in the prison. Someone, one of the prisoners' girlfriend or whatever significant other sent underwear in the mail, and so that's what he did in there, and they got a big laugh out of it. But anyways, so this is what this gentleman told me. But something else he told me, which was so random because it didn't really fit into the conversation, was that John's feet were on the floor when they found him. His feet were on the floor. And I don't know why that was important for him to share that with me, but he shared that with me, obviously in Spanish. He didn't speak English, but he wanted to make sure that I knew that, which is the same thing that they said about Epstein. When they found him, his feet were on the floor. So I don't know. That's what that made me think of. I'm not sure why he went out of his way to share that detail with me, but they were all very shocked. You know, he said he was very shocked. He said that he had seen him. I believe he said he saw him that day, he himself personally, or he had been told that someone had seen him, and there was nothing different about who they knew John to be after he came from court. You know, he seemed to be in the same spirits that he had always been in, you know. So basically just saying that there was no sign of, you know.
Nobody saw it coming.
Yeah. And I think after that, I think the next day or something, I went to what I guess you would call their morgue, and had to, you know, identify John. And they took me to a room. He was behind a glass, and so I didn't get to touch him or anything, but I just was able to see his head. I've seen people say, you know, was there a body? No one saw the body, so he's probably still alive. But I saw his body. You know, I could only see him from, you know, the neck down. Well, not the neck down. You know, they had him covered. They had the sheet, and they said because they were in the middle of doing the autopsy. So, don't know. I couldn't see the tattoos just to verify it was him. You know, all the things that people talk about.
Yeah.
Because those are the things that I was looking for, wanting to see. But I didn't see any of those things. But I studied his face. I know that face. And that was it. I just got to, like, maybe 5 minutes, 10 minutes to let me stay there. And so it looked like him, you know. It's definitely him. All the markings that I remember from his face were there. So anyways, so after that, you know, I got the report. It took a while to get the report from the prison. The investigative report, you know, so in the meantime, I'm trying to ask the attorney, you know, when will they release his body? You know, so, because I was ready to leave Spain. I didn't want to stay there. There was no reason for me to stay there. I just needed his body so I could go. But because of the investigation, they weren't releasing the body. So they didn't close the investigation until I think it was 8 months later. And they didn't release the autopsy report. What they gave as the autopsy was like a summary, right?
Right.
And then they gave a tox report showing, you know, saying that what drugs he had in his system. So I think like pain medicine or something. Nothing alarming, nothing out of the ordinary, I don't think, as far as I remember. But there was nothing, usually, you know, an autopsy report is very detailed, right? You've got pictures, you've got all the things and all the things. But there was just 4 pages, and it was, again, just like a summary. So when I got that information, the attorney said that if I allow them to close this investigation without asking them for this information, then I cannot come back and ask for it. So if I'm going to, you know, ask them to give it to me, then I have to put the appeal in now. So that's what we did. And because of that, they kept his body. And I did not get his body until December of 2023. So I had to stay there in Spain that entire time because I wasn't going to leave without him. I just wasn't going to leave without him, you know. And so that was a really, really, really hard decision. but I needed the information. You know, I don't know. I just couldn't walk away. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I just didn't understand why they wouldn't release his body, because there's nothing that they needed his body for. And so I was trying to also get like an independent autopsy, but that was going to cost me like $20K. And by then what money I had was getting really low, and I just didn't have the $20K, to have someone flown from Madrid to do the autopsy. Then I also found out that apparently, like during the first 6 months of them having his body, they did not store it properly. They just, I guess, kept it refrigerated. And so there would have been deterioration in the body.
Right. You weren't going to get much.
So, right. And so, so the decision was just made to just cremate him, because that's what he wanted anyways.
Right.
When we spoke about that, he said he wanted to be cremated. So that's what I had to do. But they still, was still in the end trying to fight to be able to see him. I don't even know what I was asking for, because I'm sure it would have been horrible to see. But I just needed to see him all the way, I unobstructed, but they wouldn't let me do that until they take the casket and just put it in there in the thing. So they let me do that. They took me down to the incineration room and had the anyways. So yeah, so they let me do that, and so that was it. And I brought his ashes back with me. Oh, I'm sorry. Brought his ashes back with me. I haven't done anything with him yet, because not ready to say goodbye,
Hey, you guys. I appreciate you watching the video. If you want to get in touch with Janice, or you would like to check out the AIntivirus website, we're going to leave it in the description. It's AIntivirus.ai, and we're going to leave all of her social media links in the description box. So you can go on there, click on them, and it'll bring you right to them. And you can follow and subscribe and do all those things, and you'll be able to get in contact with her. Thank you very much for watching. I really appreciate it. See ya.